The revenge of By the Numbers is brought to you by eSportsBet, and they are still running their World's Prediction Series 2 competition, a 10 million USDT free-to-enter competition, which is not just free to enter with up to 300,000 USDT for first place if you do well with your bets and predictions, but as well as being free to enter, you can get a little head start if you go to the Discord, discord.gg/eSportsBet, message the mod mail, say you're here for the 50,000 DJT. They won't just give you 1,000 DJT to play with, they'll give you 50,000 and get going. You can make loads of predictions, free to enter. Have a go at it. Not only CSGO, Valorant, League of Legends, Dota, Rainbow Six, FIFA, pretty much every big game you can think of.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast. Nairu, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. And 5. And oh my God, Nairu! Unbelievable.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's been another week as Counter-Strike since the last time we did one of these shows. We're a little bit wonky on the schedule because we want to fit in between the major, and so we're not on our usual Thursday night. Tonight it's going to be a Wednesday night when we do the broadcast because we want to fit in getting into the top 8 of the major. So welcome if you manage to make it, if you're staying on top of it, and if you're not, if you are here, spread the word. The show is live. Duncan, how you doing? Have you had a good week?
Yeah, all in all. I mean, look, the major's ruined, but aside from that, whatever.
Apart from the major being utterly
do what we
fucked,
can.
like,
Yeah. You know, by the way, people will never get the point of what we're talking about there. Because if you notice, I mean, it's annoying, but everyone always treats it like I'm the one who's never seen a tournament before. And they're like, but they beat them fair and square. It's like, yeah, and look what playoffs we end up with as a result. Do you want this? Does anyone enjoy these playoffs? Like, who's going to tune in and go, ooh, outsiders, Fnatic, oh my God, who got mouse spots versus Cloud? No one gives a shit about these games. Like, the spoiler is, I've made this point in the past, it's what annoys me, mate. Because I used to actually have these stupid arguments with people on Reddit, like, oh, they just want upsets. It's not even true. If you ever go and check the numbers, when upsets happen, the later playoff games just tank in terms of the viewership. Now, luckily, we did get lucky that, for example, if Na'Vi play Heroic in the semis, there's a banger. There's a classic matchup in CSGO. There's a few left that could save us. The final, obviously, could still be great. But some of these opening round matchups are so lackluster. These are matchups that you would think were an RMR to, get into the major or something. You know what I mean? Some of these are just really? The World Championship? So, and then I'll throw this in as well. So many inexperienced teams in the playoffs, and everyone knows it's rare actually that people do what Spirit did last major. Normally, if you're inexperienced, you do like Ents did. You just instantly capitulate when you play the Na'Vis, the Cloud9s, you just fold. So I have really, unfortunately, I know everyone wants to think the best and have the fucking hopium, but I have a really bad feeling the playoffs could be a bit whack until the semis.
I think so too. I'm pretty much on the same page on that front because it just doesn't feel like the key point to make is, and it's the point I got some pushback this morning too, where I was predicting, Na'Vi versus Cloud9. I think that's going to be the grand final, but I was getting a lot of pushback because I was saying, I think Cloud9 are going to choke in the finals. And that it's Navi's finals to lose at that point. And everybody's like, what do you mean? But Na'Vi, but Shiro, but they're overperforming. I'm sitting here they have no experience. They're going up against proven champions who have been in final after final and who have won the major. Cloud9 are still clearly trying to get their feet under them in a major environment, in an arena environment.
Was losing against fucking Imperial. Remember that? They were in that 0-2 game against Imperial, getting their shit pushed in. And half of it was because they were all scared because they were in front of the crowd, weren't they? So it's no, I'm with you, mate. Sadly, even if Cloud9 gets there's a world they just bend over as well. And Na'Vi just cruises to the fucking win.
You're going to need that experience, that major. It's it's the argument that we were having about best of 3s and best of 5s, where it's just you need to have that experience, of best of 5s, right? And then you start to understand what it is. That's a different environment. You got to go deep, all that sort of thing. And it's the same kind of environment here where it's now it's a major championship final. If you make it to that, because we've seen how Cloud9 have progressively gotten deeper and deeper and gotten better and better and more experience. But they flounder. They still fail in the playoffs. So now they'll have a bit more experience. Now they'll be a bit more punchy. But Na'Vi are clearly the favorites in that finals. I don't know. I don't care what anybody else thinks. It seems to me like this really has become Na'Vi's finals to lose, or
Think
their
about
major
this.
to lose.
I'll go look at the quarterfinals and I'll tell you players with any experience in a major final. So in the first matchup, you have outsiders, right? So Jame and Kicker have been in one. Brilliant. When they were a Vanguard. Crims from Fnatic has, but spoiler, he won't be going there this time. Mouse Sports, no one. Cloud9, no one. Spirit, no one. Heroic, no one. Furia, no one. And then just Na'Vi. So you've got Na'Vi, Jim, Kicker, and Crims. That's it. There's the people who've been in finals. Notice Na'Vi was the entire fucking team except some Die Young, by the way. So like spoiler, like they're going to have, if they get there, an incredible advantage. Doesn't mean the other team can't win. Every now and then you have a team that just on sort of their first try can do it. But I also agree with that premise as well. Is like, if you don't have experience even being in matches like that, you can't even know how you're going to perform. It's sink or swim. You've just been thrown in the deep end. Maybe you're the one in a million that does it and comes through. Oftentimes it goes the other way, obviously. Like, sadly, you can be very cynical when it gets to finals. The best team and the most experienced team most of the time wins.
Yeah, it's just experience. That's the thing. It's experience. It's like, it's a totally different environment. But okay, hold on. Before we get too much, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to the actual major and everything, but there is some stuff that's worth talking about outside of the major first before we get into the major and start digging our teeth in. So, like, already
a lot of fuckery and shit housery on this one, mate. Come on.
Oh, dude, like, we might as well get right into the thick of it, though, dude, because, like, this fucking news from Astralis just blows my mind. All right, so Device is going to sit out this tournament, which we were all couching it in the way that, like, oh, great, you know, no pressure. You can go into a tournament, you can get some experience with the roster, figure out what you need to work on. You know, get your feet wet. Nobody's really gonna have high expectations. It's a perfect environment. It couldn't be better. And Device is actually going to sit out this Elisa tournament happening in Espoo in Finland, and so it will not be the full Astralis roster. Device will not be competing, even though they just made this big deal about him coming home and being back on the roster with Glaive and Zip and the lads, and, you know, the lads are back together again. I mean, I can only speculate as to the reason why, because right now it's like Casper, the leader over there, is just trying to make it sound like, you know, they're doing everything right and they're really going to just like ease it in and all that. But like, what's your take on this situation? Because to me, it just blows my mind that they're not going to take advantage. It sounds perfect to me. And yet here we are, Astralis once again, throwing us for a loop.
You might remember when this story happened, like Device officially came back, everyone else was obsessed with, like, what will the lineup be like? And when will they be good again? And will he be a good player again? And remember, a storyline I told you to keep in mind was there's no guarantee he's even going to play yet. Like, it's even couched, like I said in that TV2 interview, that he hasn't overcome his issues, which apparently is like anxiety and panic attacks. He's still trying to figure his way through it. And so I took the angle, and I think this is being borne out by what's happening now. I took the angle, this is just a big PR move. I mean, as you say, it's one of those ones where it's like the most cliched, like, you know, I'm surprised they didn't do that fucking video with that music on, like, coming home, I'm coming home, tell the world and I'm coming home. Like him, Device, just black and white, like the picture of him and Nip where he's looking down, then like lifting the trophy, and that's like, he's back, David, your dad's home and he loves you now, kids. Like, it was all that shit, right? And then they were like, remember what they did, like, first day, this is how cynical Astralis is Semmler. Like, one day or something after he like signed, it was like, get your Device jerseys. Hey kids, line up for the Device jerseys. Everyone's got a Device jersey. Well, you haven't got the new Astralis Device jersey. By the way, I think they even cynically launched the new jersey like as Device rejoined, because obviously you're going to sell a fuck ton of a Device jersey. Well, spoiler, you can stick that in the fucking cupboard, can't you? He's not playing for ages. I don't even know if he plays this year, mate. If you look at the tournaments left, they're not in Blast 4 finals. He's not going to play at the Espoo thing, and they're obviously in this, sorry, they missed the major. He might not even play for the rest of this year, which, by the way, for his health issues, sounds like the perfect setup. I just feel like it's a bit disingenuous, because as you're saying, they made a big stink about it, and they even said some mad shit. Like, I'd have to find the quote somewhere, but they did imply, dude, they even said it in the post about this news, because they're Astralis, they can't just tell you info without fucking your mind a bit gently as they do. Exactly. They had a line there where they make it like, you know, of course, Device is like integral or key to our operations. He just won't be playing in the lineup. Like, what does that even mean? What does that mean? That's like, yeah, of course, Device is basically the most important part of the team, except he won't be in the team. But despite that, he is still the most important. It's like, why is this some like 2 + 2 = 5 shit? Like, I can't handle Astralis, mate. They're so fucked in the feed. And the worst thing is, because they just do this every time, it's gotten to the point now where you just go, just having a lie, aren't they? Well, it's just what's this a day ended in a Y? Like, give me a break. You know, you don't even get bothered by it. It's like whatever. So I personally think, by the way, that's why this was a genius signing by Astralis, because they don't actually have to put him into the server and show he's good yet. They just get a massive PR win in the worst moment PR-wise in the history of the org. We haven't made the major, and we're not going to be in Copenhagen at Blast. But let's get one PR win, which is let's bring home the greatest Danish player ever who won all the championships in our team and put him back in the squad. And even better news, look, the birds don't have to know this, but he ain't even playing that tournament in Finland. Just let them think he is. Let them think that'll be his warm-up tour. I think mate, there's no way they just decided this last minute. I think they always knew he was never playing then. They just essentially sold a false bill of goods to their fans, so everyone bought the jersey, etc. So whatever. It's just the way esports runs now. I just find it a bit sad because, like, I agree with you. Look, it's not like there's good teams at that tournament, but it would have been nice to at least see him play, right? At least see him in the jersey and see him actually start working with Glaive and all that jazz, right?
It could have been a decent enough test. I mean, big complexity ends Fnatic. I mean, Maus are looking good right now. They're clearly
just
shaping
not as bad as I thought.
Team that's going to challenge you. So I mean, I really thought that this was going to be a great opportunity to get the Vice in, low pressure, get some reps in, and just see where you shape up. You know, maybe I mean, there's a lot of rumors going around about Stair joining as well, and that's going to be like the trade, and that's going to be the thing. But like, I mean, it is. You can even go ahead and they're really good at spinning it as well, where it's just like, man, we had so much attention that our website crashed when we announced the device and announced the new jersey, and it's so much traffic, the website went down. It's like that's actually a bad thing, man. Like, like you need to be selling those jerseys. You need to be getting in there. Kings of Spin is really all it is. But to come back on the point, it really is just the idea that you could have used this as a test tournament. You could have used this as a way to test where Device is right now mentally. I mean, low pressure kind of situation, you know, Espoo or whatever, like nobody's going to be having big expectations. It's not a blast. It's not an ESL event. It's not anything like that. So you could have really gotten in there and gotten some reps. And so now the fact that he's not going to sit out, it makes me worried, like when the comeback actually happens, then it really is going to be pressures on. Like there's not going to be any kind of like 3 foot, you know, kiddie pool before you get into the deep end. It's like just kick him off the edge straight into the deep end and hope he swims.
He has had like almost a year off just receiving salary the whole time. So you know what, like my sympathies run a little bit dry, believe it or not, Semmler. Like I think at this point in time, crazy idea, guys. I feel like if we're going to keep paying this guy a king's ransom to be a professional video game player, maybe he should check notes, play some video games every now and then. I don't think that's a lot to ask. It's crazy. And you know what? If you also want to get paid again an enormous amount of money, you should probably be pretty good at the video game. Like, I don't know this whole thing that people are doing. I think it's like an American thing of like, you know, there's a lot of bloody pressure on us getting paid millions. Like, well, you know what, homie, then? I'll take that yoke off your back, shall I? You can just go and play for McDonald's money and have no pressure at all. Now, I tell you what, I'll take the burden of all the million. Oh, bloody hell. Like, give me a break, mate. It's mental, innit? I can't handle it.
That one does happen way too often, doesn't it? Oh. Whoa is me. Well, actually, speaking of money, let's go ahead and just hop right into the next one, which is Heroic is working towards being operationally profitable by 2023. The reason why I bring this up is that already they've begun some layoffs, laying off what they say is a quarter of their workforce, mainly in marketing and content production. But that is actually really interesting to me. They're saying, like many other companies, we're experiencing a tougher market, and they have raised some money recently. But the fact is that they are working towards an operational profit in 2023 could affect our long-term growth rate somewhat. So it's fascinating to me that there's a team out there that's willing to take the hit and is willing to say it out loud, where they're like, hey, actually we're kind of struggling right now, and we in the hopes of actually making this a sustainable thing, we're going to take the hit in the short term here in the hopes that it all balances out in the long run. But I thought that was fascinating that they were willing to go along and say, okay, we're still looking for money to bring it in, but we are trying to make it to so that we're not just hemorrhaging money either, like everybody else at the top of this scene who seem to be fine just hemorrhaging money left and right. So I mean, had you heard anything about this Heroic group and them making these kinds of changes?
No, but I actually personally, people might find this wild, but I think this is bad news. And here's why. Mm-hmm. Because if all your competitors are not only willing to run at a loss, but an enormous loss, if you go and look at like some of the teams, the Astralis, they lose millions every year. A bit teams like Navi, all the rest of them will be losing millions and millions and millions all year for their whole teams. How are you operationally going to beat them? You got less money to play with. They're spending more than you. Anyone who knows sports knows, look, Counter-Strike's a little bit different because every now and then you get the Ensigns of the world who just do a really great job scouting, or the old Gambit team, and you can get people for cheaper. But as a general trend, even in Counter-Strike, the teams that spend the most will be the ones that succeed the most. Like, think about this. Vitality spent loads, right? And look, obviously, maybe Heroic can win the major and make me look silly here. But thus far, you like the Vitality roster way better than you like Heroic's roster. Heroic's roster seems like it's capped out, right? It doesn't look like it goes much far higher up. So the problem I have with that is this. I've told you already, one thing I'm very underwhelmed by with Heroic is that they got bought out last year or whatever, and everyone kept telling me, oh, they've got money now, don't worry, they've got money. And then their only signing is Yabi. That's it. They're not the ones getting device. They're not the ones in play for these. They're not even the ones out there trying to get these other young guys. They're just sticking with their lineup that's been together for ages now as a core. It's done what it's done so far. I personally don't think they're even going to go beyond the semis here at this major. So to me, I think this sucks if you're a fan of Heroic. Like people want esports to be profitable. That isn't just the world we're in right now. And unfortunately, if you try to be profitable, you either are dooming your team to just be what they are now. Like, oh, they're like a cool team that could come like 6th. That's not really like fun as a fan. You want to see them go to the top. Remember, they've had this status, which is earned for the last year. And let's be real, last 2 years almost. They're the best Danish team. But that doesn't yield what the best Danish team used to yield. That meant you could be number one in the world. This one probably can't be. So I know what people mean. Like, the idea is maybe a noble one, but I just think it's maybe a bit short-sighted. It also makes me a bit concerned. Like, who are the people buying in? Because if you buy in right now in esports, it's supposed to be with the understanding it's like a emerging market or whatever the fucking euphemism is. And
all the gamble, right?
Yeah, you're supposed to spend money. You're sort of getting your foot in the door, right? So to me, if you're going to go like profit-based already, I think you're just going to have a hard time competing with the big dogs. I will shade this in though. This is happening in League of Legends right now, Semmler, and I wonder if it's going to come to CSGO. Because all these people are very, very nervous, these investors, about where the stock market and where the economy in general is going and what's happening with inflation. I do get the sense, like in League of Legends, for example, it's just straight up admitted the LCS teams are all going to downsize and cut salaries and not get as many imports and, like gamble on the NA player instead of the big. They're going to go the opposite route. So I wonder at some point in time, some of these European teams are going to do the same thing. So maybe this is just a moment where you think, you know what, we don't spend too much. Like, I'm going to go ahead and guess there's no way Heroic are on the enormous salaries. I would guess they're on like the 15K a month type salary, So you can, here's the thing. If you're the Heroic org, this is brilliant because you can sort of min-max, can't you? You're actually probably getting a good deal on those players. They still have the outside chance like they do here to make a deep run and make you look good, but you're not paying the top dollar. You're not gambling like the G2s and Vitalities are with the 600K buyouts and then bringing in big names and putting everything in and then buying extra players. You haven't done that. So, like, if you're the Heroic org and the business people, great news. I just think for everyone else, like, I don't watch the game, Semmler, to go, oh, Heroic did lose that one, and Yabi isn't that good. But you know what? I'll sleep easy tonight knowing they're in the red, they're the black or whatever. Like, no, I'd rather go, they lost $1 million, but they won the game. Brilliant. I took my money. Fuck do I care?
Well, actually, this is the thing. Like, I didn't include this article to go in this direction, but now that we're kind of talking along these lines, I'm actually kind of curious. Do you recall what the climate was like back in 2008? Back when there was the big recession, big crash, and everything kind of receded.
What's funny is
what I've heard. The legend is that esports almost bought the farm, and that it came very close to just completely collapsing when there was no more marketing budget left to spend on esports, and everybody was kind of just like, oh shit, barely making it through. Could we be looking at a similar situation now where teams are starting to look to try and cut back?
There was no understanding of market back then, though, because like the teams that people who invested, like they just owned the teams. It wasn't like a traditional investment method. So what happened was the most famous example ever was the team Meet Your Makers, because people are going to know that team kept running for years afterwards as like a shadow of its former self. Meet Your Makers basically was a team which had famously like Neo and Taz, the Poles, and then they had like Grubby and fucking Mood and stuff. Like they had basically the biggest names in esports, and they were doing that shit similar. They were one of the first ones to come in, and the way they got those teams wasn't like, let's have a bidding war. It was like, right, what do you get paid now? Here's 2 times that. Here's 3 times that. And so people famously back then, this won't sound like anything to a modern fan, but back then, I think it was claimed that like Moon made like $10,000 a month, which you have to realize would be like 10 times what the best Fnatic CS player made on top of his prize money, And so what happened was the people in the big orgs, that was the most famous one. They just literally the next day when all this shit went down in the financial world, they were just told, like the polls were basically told, like, like you can basically just leave, like we're never going to be able to pay you again, we've got no money. And that was it. It was just, you woke up one day and the world had ended. And then the other double whammy of that period of time was, remember, think of the year, that was the year CGS failed as well. So if you're in Counter-Strike especially, that was like just you're on the ropes, just taking body blows, mate, and you're in danger, you're about to get knocked out in that scenario. So yeah, what happened was, this is the good news, by the way, about the way esports works. You know, like the euphemism for when the market just crashes and basically everyone who's fake gets washed out is market correction, right? Because it makes it sound like, oh no, it's just correcting it. Like, yeah, by the way, guys, like that's like saying like, oh, there's all this like all these like negative elements in this area. Oh, let's just correct the whole area with a machine gun. Like, oh, it's all corrected now. It's only good elements now. Like, this is like dodgy euphemisms. What I will say is this: the good news is though, when you have these scenarios where basically money becomes tight and there's less money to invest and things you've currently done have to succeed, it does wash a lot of the shit out of the industry. It just means they're the first rats to jump off the sinking ship. They're the ones that aren't going to get reinvestment and get more money. They're the ones that their current approach where they've overspent is going to fail. And so what it'll essentially test is who's got skills beyond money. Like, here's the thing. Now's when it's great to be an ENCE or something like that, where you haven't like leveraged yourself to the hills and you've done a good job with your GM in. You've sort of built a nice little squad. You've never overspent. You've kept players at like reasonable salary. That's where you're laughing. Like, this is actually where sort of being a little bit tight, maybe this is where Heroic will make out like a bandit. Who knows? The problem is, like, the big orgs, there will be a couple at least that probably will just slash the whole thing. If you fail in Counter-Strike, maybe you just leave eventually. I mean, there's the thing people haven't stopped and thought about. What happens if someone does a Cloud9 and goes, you know what? No more CSGO for now. I've spent too much on that now. I doubled down a couple of times with big rosters. It's not for me. Because what a lot of people won't know at the moment is one of the biggest factors as to whether someone is in an esport isn't how profitable the esport is. It's just if the owner likes that game or not, and the investors like that game. So famously, in my opinion, the only thing that actually keeps people like G2 in CSGO is that they A, have a track record of having fans in the game, and B, the owner very much liked CSGO and wanted to succeed sort of for his own reasons. It wasn't because it was the best game, because when I've gone and talked to some of those guys that you'll know from Overwatch League, like Andy Miller from NRG, like super legit businessman with amazing like real world business experience, has had mega success in Overwatch League and other games. The NRG guy, if people remember, who used to be in CSGO where they sold their team to EG, right? The thing is though, he just doesn't care about CSGO. So to him, he's like, actually, I don't like the CSGO market that much. It doesn't have like a franchise league. I don't feel as though like it's going to be profitable. So for now, I'll just stick with the other games. I'll do Valorant, I'll do Overwatch. So at the moment, a lot of fans probably don't even realize that we're actually getting away in these tough times in the market. Sometimes because someone just loves CS. Maybe they just want to keep a team. Maybe Jason Lake stays for that reason. I don't know. But not everyone's going to be like that. There will be some orgs might be cynical.
I think complexity, like the way you mentioned that though, is like you could actually see this bloat that we've been talking about for a long time in terms of player salaries. I mean, just costs in general. This could actually trim all that bloat right off, you know. So the way that the VCs got into their bidding wars and drove all the salaries up to crazy amounts, where there's no way that you're making that back because that player doesn't have a platform, doesn't have a Twitch stream or anything like that you can sell marketing and sponsorship on the way that you can with Simple, for example. Because every time Simple clicks live, he's got 20,000 viewers. So it's like that you can sell, that you can promote, you can get a sponsor for. There, it's worth the salary. If you've got a guy who barely uses Twitter and doesn't have a YouTube or a Twitch or anything else, just plays the games, a lot harder to justify the big salary unless that guy is winning you tournaments day in, day out. Like if he is at the top of the pack, well then okay, fine. But if you're fighting for that like top 15 spot, it's not going to cut it. You need to have some kind of platform to sell on. So what I'm wondering about now is just like how much of a situation is this where we'll get to see the bloat get cut off, it'll scrape the jelly off their backs in a sense, and we'll actually start to see a return to normalcy in a sense of like reasonable salaries where it's like, okay, this is sustainable. We've determined like what is sustainable now in terms of like the ad revenue, in terms of the sponsorships, like what we can actually do, what we can actually sustain. We're gonna come back to reason into like a sustainable thing, and this is gonna level it all out again. So it could be really interesting. I just caught that article out of the corner of my eye this morning, and I was like, okay, that's actually really fascinating because that could be a growing trend going forward. That we could start to see teams try to make these kinds of plays. Because I think you're bang on the money, man. That's why I keep talking about it, like Black Molly and PGL to an extent, are teams that haven't taken investment, who've always just done business straight up in terms of like the money that they get in, that's what they budget around. And so I wonder, like, are they going to be able to survive this? Or are they going to be in a position where they don't have that VC cushion, right? They don't have that bonus cash that's just piled up like Scrooge McDuck or something. And because they go deal to deal, it might actually come back to haunt them rather than having the Scrooge McDuck money.
Also, I'm just going to check this, but like I'm just trying to see where their website is because I'm not aware of any game other than CS:GO that they're in. Heroic, like are they even in another game?
It's the heroic.
Apparently, they have PUBG and Rainbow Six. So to be fair, maybe Rainbow Six is good. I don't know, but like
Rainbow Six actually is pretty solid right now. I think they have a franchise league, don't they? Or they have some.
No, but I mean, I don't know whether their team is good or not, though. I don't know if their team is good in the game. So the problem I have is this: I would suspect it's like Astralis, and they're just not relevant team outside of CS:GO. Like in League of Legends, Astralis are bottom feeder if people don't know, and don't even attempt to sign the big names. So I also get the vibe with Heroic, like they're just like in CS:GO, their team makes them good, but they're not like a G2 or a Vitality guys. Like those are orgs that are giant esports orgs in every big game, pretty much if they want to be.
Well, I mean, this is something that we're going to keep an eye on for sure. Like there was one note right over the summer, Heroic raised 1.7 million in funding at an unfavorable valuation. So I guess maybe this is their play to try and get a favorable valuation going forward in the future if they try to raise again, because they've apparently raised another 750,000 in a loan. So like I can only guess that this is them trying to pivot right now to try and trim some fat and make it look a little bit more favorable and maybe lower some of the costs involved.
Maybe people will be. Maybe that'll confuse people, like why it would phrase it like that, like an unfavorable. Like, think about what I just said there. Here's why it's unfavorable. Because when you value something, what you're actually valuing is what it will do in the future. That's why it's incredibly valuable. That you're not doing it based on like they were good in the past. Like that's why Astralis didn't go on the stock market and just get an incredible amount. Because if anything, they were never going to get the success they had with the old CS:GO team. That had been and gone. So the problem they have in this team is this: all the value of Heroic in CS:GO is the fact that the players are good. If they don't have those players, this becomes an average-ass team. They're not relevant. Even those slots they have the Blast slot, they have the EPL slot, but like they require teams to do anything within that. Like just being in the league isn't enough. And then, as you say, think about this: where's their big streaming personality? Cadian's like a not bad fan favorite. He's not some massive streamer, and the rest of them, by the way, are nobodies in the streaming world. They're absolute nobodies. So the problem is, you don't have a lot of assets here in this team. You're actually just sort of living and dying on the CS:GO team, as far as I know.
I'm just wondering, I mean, what happened with Astralis recently? Because they've plummeted again. Every time you mention Astralis, I check their share price just to see where they're at, and they've gone even lower now. They were floating around like two Danish crowns for a good long while, but now they've even pitched under that to 1.94. So man, like I just really wonder what's going on with the Astralis, what their game plan is on Astralis to keep things going. It does make you cynical, or not cynical, but just the whole config play. If they're strapped for cash, yeeting config instead of holding on to them just makes a whole lot more sense now, because now they have money to play with for device, and they have maybe, what they need to get Stare on board without actually having to increase budget, because it doesn't sound like they have much budget to work with. It's brutal. All right. Well, we're going to keep an eye on things. Obviously, I think we're going to be talking a lot more of like stories like this going forward. It's just I feel like it's going to be a thing in esports. We're just going to have to keep an eye on. But yeah, worth mentioning for you all. And also, in case you're wondering, we are for this show, like this episode, and going forward, we're going to have all of the links below. So if you're curious about the source, if you want to read the article for yourself, we'll have the links in the description below, so you can go and check it out for yourself and see what's what. Last little bit before we actually get into the major proper was just that the Blast Fall final schedule just got announced, and they're going to have two groups, double elim. Going straight into the playoffs, top seed in the group, 3 teams out of two groups of 4. The top 3 will progress to the playoffs. Number 1 seed goes straight to the semis. Second and third battling it out in the quarters. So we're back into that format here. That's going to get played out over several days. But it is, it's worth mentioning that they finally gone ahead and gotten their schedule out there, so we know what to expect for Blast. More teams, pretty much like just major teams. What we've seen from the major, we're going to have at Blast again. So it's a bit brutal for Blast. It's kind of hard to follow up on the major and then still have like Na'Vi, Heroic, NiP. But one team that stands out, I guess, is Fluxo. I'm just like, Fluxo. This is
Team Phelps plays for it.
Yeah, qualified through the North American Showdown. So they'll be the odd ones out here, because everybody else we're going to be pretty familiar with. Group A is FaZe, Heroic, NiP, and OG. Group B is Na'Vi, Liquid, G2, and Fluxo. So, yeah, I mean, just the other big tournament to keep an eye on going forward, obviously, because the fall finals is going to feed into the world finals that are going to happen in Abu Dhabi at the end of the year in December. So, was there anything that you were looking forward to in particular with Blast Fall, or is it just because it is going to be another arena event, it's going to be another Copenhagen event, and there's not going to be Astralis there, so maybe we'll get more of a fair disposition from the fans instead of constantly shouting the way the Brazilians are now at the major?
And apparently everyone loves that. That's apparently the new best thing possible in esports. So I guess that's the negative, that you don't have people cheating, right? Yeah, sucks. No, the thing is, it's the exact same format that they used in the previous one, if people remember. I actually do like it in general because basically it means you do get... the only downside is, isn't it something stupid like... No, everything's best of 3. That's all good, right? Basically, it's a very forgiving format because only one team goes out of each group. So what it essentially means is, if you are the big dogs, the Phases, the Navis, G2, etc., like it's so unlikely that you come fourth. If you come fourth, I mean, fuck you at that point in time. Like we can't just give you a free playoff spot. But it means that at least like you have a nice playoffs where you have the 6 teams. It goes like quarters into the semis, into the finals. So like I think it's in general a pretty good format. I think the problem they just have at Blast is you are never going to be able to be considered better than a Cologne or Katowice when you operate such a small scale. That's the problem. Even if the matches are awesome and they end up being great, like it just makes it feel like more like the old weekend tournaments to me than it does like when I do like Cologne. It does feel like a major. That's like 2 weeks or something, doesn't it? It's like feels like fucking hell, or maybe it's a week. Maybe I'm exaggerating.
It's brutal, man, when you think about it. I was trying to make that point today where I was like, well, you know, you could like be competing in other prestige events, right? You know, and I'm going down the list like Katowice, Cologne, and then you kind of trail off, and then you say Blast Fall finals, you know, out loud, and then you kind of like, are you going to put that on the same level as Cologne though? Are you going to put that on the same level as Katowice? Not really. Like ESL have really put themselves in a terrific position to just be the dominant force in it's almost like you do look at Blast as like the break in between the ESL events. Like, oh, okay, cool, we can take a breather here because it's not as prestigious, it's not ESL. Like they really have done a terrific job of positioning themselves in a way that they have the prestige events and now they have the major. So like ESL are just ending the year super strong. You're going to leave it over. It's almost like they're leaving it over to Blast as an afterthought. And I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, I don't really know what Blast have to set themselves apart from ESL. They have the same teams, they have the same commentator, they pretty much have the same production because ESL takes everything that they come up with. So, you know, ESL looks like Blast within, you know, an event. So, I mean, what do Blast have?
They don't even have the casters, as we discussed on 2 episodes ago. They don't even have Scrawny Launders
with Freya or Launders or Scrawny anymore. I mean, Anders and Moses are there are there at the major, same way as they are when they're casting Blast. Maui is at the major. He's working an ESL event, and you know they were just starting to use Maui on the broadcast. Maniac is at the, you know, it's like there's really nothing there's nothing unique about Blast anymore that you could be like, oh, okay, cool, I can look forward to that at least, right? It's a tough one for Blast. It really is we really are in this kind of space now where it's like ESL is the dominant force in Counter-Strike, and Blast is just there to be a little bit of a distraction in between ESL events. It feels like, because you're not going to consider a Blast Fall finals when you're talking about prestige events. And results. You're not going to consider that to supersede Cologne or Katowice or any of those.
I mean, here's the joke. Most people, when I say it now, will be like, oh yeah, he's right. People forget, dude, before they had Spinks, the other Vitality lineup finished second at the last Blast. That was their big result. It's just the problem is because A, they didn't win, and B, no one really does care about Blast as much as those big events we're talking about. It's almost been memory hold. Everyone's like forgotten it even happened. People remember Na'Vi won with some dying on. That's why everyone was cool with him sort of staying in the lineup. But they forget that Vitality went to the finals. So to me, that kind of says it in itself. Because if I flip it the other way around, remember, dude, Movistar Riders only made top 4 at Cologne, and people already in their brain were like, "Ooh, maybe it's a team to watch out for. Some players, like, what can he do?" That just shows you like the impact the event has. You know, like it just tells me that like Blast has more of like a cult following at the moment than it does like it's not the big event, is it?
No, they haven't. They haven't quite made the leap yet. But okay, that's enough of the housekeeping. Let's actually jump into the big event and some of the stuff that's been going on there. So starting off light, Simple begs the crowd not to boo him. So, dude, I was cracking up too when I saw this. It's great. So I'll read the tweet out for you guys. And this is okay. So it's actually your tweet as well. You put that one in the notes. Okay. But Brazilian fans, I mean, me and my team are not ready to lose. We're going to prepare. As much as I love you, as much as I love you equals as much as we can't lose against my lovely Furia. Please don't boo us. Thank you. You're welcome. It's like, What world does this happen in?
Oh, it's mental. It's absolutely mental. Think about this. Can you even imagine like Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan? Can you imagine these guys going like, hey, coming out before the game to the crowd? Hey guys, just get on the mic. Like, just thing on. Hey guys, you know I love you all, and I know that you're all fans of the other team, but please don't boo me. By the way, think how mad that is. He didn't even say what would be a vaguely more reasonable spin on it, which is, please cheer for me. Like the obvious angle would be like, just cheer for us if we do well, or cheer for a good game, right? No. He explicitly gave away his whole psychology by saying he doesn't want to be booed. By the way, he doesn't want to be, but think about how entitled and narcissistic Simple is. Not only does he imagine he can use Twitter to request not to be booed, but also on top of that, he can ask a Brazilian fan base to not boo him when he plays against the only Brazilian team left. Like, have you just lost the plot completely? Also, what the fuck angle is he on? It reminds me, there was like a bit on Seinfeld once where Kramer has to convince, like, here's the basic premise. Kramer's like sleeping with some guy's wife, right? Who's like some classic, he looks like almost Armenian or something, like they're like a little gremlin looking fucking guy. And when that guy comes and Kramer's sleeping with her, right? He finds like the fucking, like his wife's like fur coat. So obviously the guy's caught Kramer red-handed. So what Kramer does as a quick pivot is he tries to tell that guy, oh no, this belongs to Jerry, like Seinfeld. Because he's like, well, why would he wear like this? Is like a women's coat. He's like, no, entertainers, like they like to be flamboyant, like a fancy boy. And the guy's like, yeah, I guess they do. He's like, yeah, exactly. They're all like, like, love me, want me, need me. It's like, that's the fucking Simple, bro. That's what he's like here. It's like, I must be loved by everyone. Like, what are you talking? You mad narcissist. What are you talking about? And as I say, what legendary player ever did that, mate? Like, please don't boo me. Please. Like, oh, shut the fuck up.
I'm told that the ambiance in that arena is just amazing, and that it can't be beat, and that there should be an event in Brazil every year. So clearly it's just got to be such an amazing fan experience that Simple feels like he has to go out of his way to beg them not to boo him, because I guess the boos are just that brutal when you're playing against Furia. I mean, you
would love this, by the way. Fans. Here's what you actually want. It's the opposite mentality to Simple. You want the guy who's so gangster. Kobe Bryant used to say this, Semmler. There's a commercial I'll show you later. It's mega. They did a commercial right at the end of his career where the whole premise was, like, obviously, aside from the home crowd, all the crowds in the NBA used to cheer against Kobe because he was like the best player, and they like hated him because he was going to beat their team, wasn't he? So famously, they used to even chant like, Kobe sucks. So they did a commercial like that, Semmler, where it's like all the crowd shouting that, and then it's him as always like the conductor, just like, because his whole shit, if you don't know, was when you're on the road, to him, it's like the most fun feeling is to make the crowd, it's like the Fallen thing, make the crowd like a library, make them just silent. They have nothing to cheer for. They're just depressed because you're beating their ass. That's what you want to hear from like someone who's, remember as well, they're the odds on to win the whole major, Semmler. And you're worrying about shit like this. Like, get your head in the game, you arsehole. What a fucking idiot this guy is. It's mad, isn't it?
It had me worried, though, for a second there, because I'm just like, oh, shit, I just spent all morning predicting these guys to just win hands down, and that they're the only ones who are not going. I mean, there's a legitimate argument to say that this is actually the worst draw possible for Furia. To get Na'Vi first round in the quarterfinals, pretty much the only team, I think, out of all of the other teams that should not get flustered by the fact that your fans are going to be cheering against them. Like, those guys
Semmler.
They know they can win.
You remember what all the dumb fans say when you point out flaws with the BO1s and the seeding and the Swiss system? Here's what they always say, Semmler. Because they're only looking at it from the side of the good team, like FaZe, who gets eliminated. They go, well, if you were good enough, you'd win. Are you ready, Semmler? I'm going to show you how that makes no sense at all. Because Furia 3-0'd Semmler. So by 3-0ing, here's their reward in the quarterfinals. Far and away the best team available. Now, logically, if you're Fury and you lose, you should have just... Oh, shit, you can't 4-0 a Swiss system. Yeah, there was nothing you could do. It's almost like the system fucking blows. And by the way, when the major winner does end up being this team that went 3-2, it'll just show what I meant by that. Like, it's just absolute garbage, isn't it? So, to me, it's actually so sad for Fury. I agree with you, by the way. I actually look at the rest of that draw, and I'm like, mate, give me anyone else here. Anyone. Like, give me Heroic, fuck it. I'll take outside any of these teams. At least I have a shot at it. Like, Na'Vi, the joke is I've 3-0'd, and I've been given absolutely the worst possible draw. And even though I'm the home favourite, like, I'm also playing people like Simple, mate, where it doesn't even matter if the crowd does cheer or boo or whatever. Like, he's just doing that because, like, sadly, if you notice, the other meta is you just pander to them on Twitter, don't you, and like beg them for likes and shit. So I think it just lacks a little bit of decorum to me, mate.
It does. It does. It is just funny, right? It's like, okay, I get it. You're playing both sides of the coin, but still, man, come on. Like, you don't need to go there. You should be the one who doesn't care. Like, boo me harder. I don't care. I'm still gonna just wreck your entire team. I'm gonna backpack my team, even if those guys are the ones who are floundering under the pressure. Doesn't matter. I'm simple. I'm gonna do like in my last match against Big, where I just decided to drop 27 on Mirage and then take it easy for the rest of the match.
Mate, here's what I would do.
It's all good.
Are you ready? Here's what I would do, Semmler. I would just walk out in a fucking messy Argentina jersey.
Okay.
And be like, the goat's here, motherfucker. What up? Hey. You don't think the whole crowd just start booing, throwing shit? I'll be loving it. I'll be loving that shit.
Okay.
Why not? Just fuck with them.
Get into the football bats, dude. Yeah, nobody's going to touch Simple either. That would be so fucking funny. All right. Different tone. Was the I mean, again, you are in Brazil, so here I am talking about nobody's going to touch Simple, but they will touch your equipment. They will touch your gear if you leave anything lying around not bolted down, especially in a place like Rio. Come on.
You've gone too far. Just set up the story as they said it. Like, remember, I want you to say how they phrased it as well. What was the original story? Somebody just explain the story, because I've got a brilliant rant for you on this one, mate. Come on.
I just want so people of the Major, I've lost my camera.
Who is this Canon
Arctic, very unique photo belt attachment, no straps or anything else. It was last seen in the media PR room next to my laptop. Nothing else from the room is missing. Keep your eyes peeled, please. And so so there's a second tweet in this. And
who is it from though? You have to say who it's from.
Oh, it is Adela.
It's a very famous photographer, basically. Like, yes. The fans don't know you're referring to here.
Okay, so it is worth mentioning. It is Adela Schneider, the ESL photographer now, who's taken over, who's pretty much like their go-to, and it is it just blows to see that this is what's happened to her. But also, it's like, come on, like, you have the veteran chops, like you really do have the veteran chops of having traveled everywhere with ESL to all sorts of different places. Leaving your camera lying around is just completely out of line. But the one point that, so there was a follow-up comment that I found pretty good, where it was like, last comments, it's not back and it's time to move on, because she puts out a finder's fee, 15%, no questions asked. If you bring it to anybody at the ESL staff, no questions, you'll get some money for finding the camera, right? So she tried, and still that wasn't it. So this shit happens everywhere, not just Brazil, and it's a risk that comes with a job. Okay, no, I can't keep my camera in my hotel safe when I'm working. Lol. Yeah. Thank you for the overwhelming support. But it's just the whole, this shit happens everywhere, not just Brazil. So she has to head off the, well, you are in Brazil comments. It's like, no, this happens everywhere. But all right, let me hear your rant here, because that's the story, is essentially that an industry vet fucked up and left something valuable lying around in a place that people will steal a pair of flip-flops if it's a nicer pair of flip-flops than theirs. So what was your take on this situation?
All right, first and foremost, this is, by the way, going to be a precedent that will go forwards in esports. Get ready for it. Which is, now that we're having events in countries that are a fucking joke with enormous crime rates and murder rates, and literally ESL sending out information to the players and teams like, stay in your hotel, do not have any valuables with you. Now that we're going to dangerous environments, Semmler, it's not going to be that we're going to go and explain to everyone, this is dangerous, crime. No, it's going to be the opposite. We're going to carefully tiptoe around how fucked up the area we're going to is, and we're going to forgive literal crimes that elsewhere would decry the people who lived in that place. So here's the thing, when she says that line, she goes, this shit happens everywhere, not just Brazil. That's false. Has it happened to you in other places? Have you lost your camera in other? Has people stolen your camera in other countries? Spoiler, I'm going to guess no.
Shit lying around in Sweden.
Here's the problem. That's where she's full of shit, by the way. I've been in press rooms before, Semmler. When you're saying, veteran shop, no, if you're in a normal press room in like Cologne, Germany, and you put your camera down, which by the way, you have to. A camera person's job, if you don't know, is constantly running, taking shots, going back, like, that's rendered on the computer, taking shot, right, that's going there, right? What you're hoping on is, A, you have someone sat next to you who's maybe on a laptop and you go like, watch that for a minute, I'm going to be away. But aside from that, at all times in these areas, there's loads of equipment left there. There's laptops that they're open. Dude, they're not even like in like the locked mode. They're just open, rendering things. There's all equipment. And what you trust is, one, the security means people can't just come in willy-nilly, and then two, people wouldn't steal it anyway. Like, this is a press area, like, we're all working here. So no, actually, it is the standard assumption in normal countries, you could leave your camera there, come back and it'll still be there. There isn't some safety setup where you can lock it to yourself or lock it in a case. That would just, logistically, it wouldn't work. You wouldn't have time to do your job. But here's the darker part that no one's getting about this. Since it's heavily implied, she
Darker
thinks she
part?
just put it down into her press area and then came back and it wasn't there. Well, spoiler, fans aren't allowed in the press area. It's implied it was fucking stolen by other press from any country, but spoiler, there's loads of Brazilians there, or even better, the staff of the fucking event. Those are the people who go, it's not pro players stealing it, is it? So like logically, it's not even just normal people have stolen it. That means you can't even trust the other media and fucking potentially the ESL staff working the event or working in the arena. Someone's just going to come up and steal it. And then when you say like that it was phrased like, oh, there's a finder's fee, no questions asked, that gives the whole game away. Do you know the first thing I'd ask if someone came up with a piece of stolen equipment? Where did you get it? Where did you find it? I would want to know exactly where you were. Now, look, I know I'm getting it back, but spoiler, the criminal could be the one coming to collect the fee. So, of course, you would do your due diligence. What you're saying when you say that, no questions asked, is almost certainly you stole it. So can I please just have it back? Like, genuinely, you've wrecked me, you've stolen it, it's going to be worth thousands. She even says, essentially, it wasn't insured. And so, look, even if it's the case, I have to pay you 15% who stole my fucking camera. I'm willing to do it rather than pay thousands for my new camera and look like a dickhead with no insurance. So I just think it's insane that this wasn't phrased this way in the first tweet, Semmler. Someone has stolen my camera. I put it down in the press area. ESL, what are you doing about it? And the security, where the fuck is my camera? Why am I in a country where people are just stealing expensive cameras from the people who are required to do the job of there's only about like 4 or 5 people at these events that take all the photos, guys. If those guys don't take the photos, we don't get the photos. We will have events that you'll have to look at the stream. You won't have all those great shots of Elise crying when he gets eliminated. That person has to be able to run and be there exactly the moment he comes off stage. They can't stimulate it. You just get the shot or you don't get the shot. So I found this whole thing mental, and I'll spin it into an angle I know you'll appreciate, because this is what fans won't get, Semmler. They'll think to themselves, but why can't you just say that it was stolen? Because I'm going to explain to you a very simple concept called the Oppression Olympics. It was originally called the Oppression Stack that came out of the Occupy Wall Street movement. The premise of left-wing thinking, guys, if you don't know, politically goes like this. It is a literal hierarchy based on oppression points, which is how much your group isn't, in theory, the dominant group within society. So if you are a woman, you get oppression points. But spoiler, if you're a woman who's a white woman who's from America and you're middle class and you're against a poor black woman, you automatically lose. She has more oppression points than you. On the hierarchy, you're above her, which means she now has to be catered to. You have to give things up and you basically have to grovel before her. So in this scenario, what Adela has done here, someone who, by the way, is a brilliant photographer, but loves to get involved with all that feminism shit on the internet, loves to have takes about like naughty things that men have said and done on Twitch. And can you believe when you play the game, they say something rude if they hear your woman? What if they steal your equipment you need to do your job? Anything a problem with that? Oh, no, wait, because you think it might be a Brazilian and you're in Brazil, you don't have a problem with theft. In fact, you're even willing to pay the thief to give you your thing back, and you still won't even call him a thief. Because that's the maddest part about this whole thing. If she'd have said someone stole my camera, would anyone have leveled like some sort of claim again? How dare you? Wow, what are you implying? I'm not, by the way, she herself even did that thing there, Semmler, that I can't handle, where it's like, you're going like, look, this can happen anywhere. No, but it did happen here, and it did happen to you, and it has happened, and you still won't say it was stolen, even though it was stolen. So what you're doing now, and this is so dark, because again, if you know how left thinking goes, this in the real world, by the way, does play into like rapes and murders, where you have insane stories where someone's like, look, even though literally my family was raped or murdered and died because of exactly these group of people in this area, I wouldn't want anyone to be biased and think they rape or murder people. So even though that did happen, and I'm telling you it happened, it could have happened to anyone really, couldn't it? It's like you're actively like almost on the side of the rapist and the murderer in that scenario. So in this scenario, by the way, what I don't get is you're now carrying water for the person who stole your camera. Like, I actually feel sorry for losing the camera and the problem it'll have for your job, but this is so whack. And like that's why I tied it in like that, Semmler, because the same sort of person will try and get some like 18-year-old idiot pro cancelled because he said something mean on voice comms, but now apparently people can just steal cameras and you're going to pay them for the honor. Like, it's just whack, homie. It's just whack.
Yeah, it's a clown world. Like the whole thing, you just honk through the days. It's like every day it feels like there's just a new story like this where it's just like you just have to honk because otherwise.
Right, here's the edgy joke. I'll give you the edgy joke. But even though her camera was stolen, she is glad that she still went to the event and put the camera down. You know, I was leaning into what the obvious angle is there, but she may as well just be like, I'm glad I actually did still come to Brazil, though, because then I could have been stolen twice as hard. I'd keep that one sort of PG, but you get what I was.
But dude, I think you're bang on the money, man. Like that is the unfortunate read on the situation, is that everything has to be politically correct and everything has to be PC and careful and considerate and all nice and all. It's all about how are you framing things? How are you? And unfortunately, once you become exposed to it, then you can't help but see it everywhere, and then it just becomes a natural thing. Like I can't look at anything now without seeing this kind of shit.
No. And by the way, technically, she's also wrecked herself with the phrasing, because in the follow-up tweet, she says, one last thing, I'm not comfortable with taking donations. Yeah, no shit, you prefer to make them.
But she does actually, it is worth clarifying, I am always insured. So I guess that the camera is insured.
Oh, maybe she did have insurance there.
So let's hope the equipment gets covered with no problems. I mean, the thing is, I would laugh my head off if the insurers came back and be like, well, no, you were in Brazil. What are you thinking? Like, hell, we're going to pay you your camera back. No insurance company is that based. But, I mean, this is just one of those unfortunate things for Adela. I hope that it works out for her. And, well, there you go. One of the takeaways from the event so far. The other one that had to do with infrastructure was a power outage happening. So it's like ESL just can't catch a break. One thing has to happen after another at this event. Constant PC issues, constant tech issues, and now you have a power outage on top of it all. So, I mean, it's a kick in the dick right now for ESL left, right, and center. And
crazy idea. Maybe don't have an enormous digital world championship in Brazil.
Fancy
I don't know if you're aware of this, but countries like Sweden have sort of had the internet nailed for about 30 years at this point in time. Like, they're not whatever those sinister terms are, developing market. They're not any of that shit. You don't need to. But the point is, to save money and to be able to have this enormous crowd without it costing you millions, they've gone to Brazil. Well, guess what? You take your chances when you go places like that, and you might end up with a scuffed ass cell. The joke is someone probably stole the fucking power line, and then they were like, please return the power generators. No questions asked. There will be a 15%. What's that? The fucking Brazil tax.
We'll pay you 15% of the value.
Someone make a meme like Brazil tax, 15%, no questions asked. Like, what is this shit? I know. It's mental in it. I know. What the hell?
I mean, why? That's just, it's the Wild West. I don't know, man. You're going out there. It's just, I mean, I was literally on the phone with some people over there today where they're just like, yeah, it's actually a little bit more run down than I thought it would be. It's just like, yeah, dude, it's Rio.
That's also why that's also why on some level do hate all the talent. Because here's the thing, Semmler, if you follow them on social media, the whole game's given away and it's transparent, right? When I'm thinking of all these problems they're having, all the issues, the crowd cheating, the fact that cameras are getting stolen, they're in like dodgy areas where ESL has to tell people not to go out, right? You're thinking, well, why do the talent all just say it's brilliant? And then you see all their Instagrams and they're in like some villa, like looking out across like the ocean, like, oh, lovely. What is this? Fresh fruit brought delicious from the tree. Like, you're just living like, you're like those fucking whack guys. Did you ever see that like video that went viral where there was like in I'm gonna say like Thailand or Indonesia or some weird country like that, there was all like these Westerners that had gone for some like yoga retreat, but the whole premise was because they all had loads of money somewhere, they essentially just paid the locals to act like slaves for them, and they were just living in some like fucked utopia, except it was just them, and then everyone who was doing all the hard labor was just like some local guy, obviously. So the joke is like, yeah, that's the cost of your utopia. It's like, yeah, you're just on some Elysium shit where you just look down across peons. Like, it's no wonder you think it's brilliant. You're at the top of the pyramid, you twat.
There's a whole industry built around that, dude. That's the nouveau riche bougie way to live now. You just go over there and live the experience, do your hot yoga and dance like the new kind of dancing style where you just let it all flow and hang out. Yeah, for sure. Just trolled. Well, I mean, like that's Rio is Rio, and that's usually how events go. Is that the guys? It was the same thing when we were at like Star Ladder in Istanbul in Turkey. We were out in like the boonies somewhere at a resort, and it's like you just didn't leave the resort because you were just in the middle of nowhere, nothing to do. You're just like, okay, I guess we're here for the duration, and fine, fair enough. You're there to cast a tournament. You're not there to have fun. So it's just like, as in like you're not there to go party and do all sorts of crazy shit. You're there to work. So there is that element as well. But like on the off days, you are kind of locked down, I guess. But these guys, I mean, it is what it is. They're it is just fun to kind of like, I guess, take a little bit of steam out of ESL, just because it is the thing to do, and they really can't catch a break because it's like they literally have to wait 2 years to run this event, and then when they do run this event, it's during a highly contested election when people are rioting in the streets over the results because they're claiming it's stolen, and then they can't even run the event smoothly because their PCs and their power are going out. So like ESL are just
have they considered, Semmler, just saying that if they return all the stolen votes, they will give them 15%, no questions asked? Apparently that works. Apparently that works in the locals. I'm just saying, it's just a suggestion.
Did you see that shit where they said they're like Supreme Court said you're not allowed to talk about the election results now? It's like this was a democratic election and you're not allowed to discuss the results. It's like,
sounds
okay,
familiar.
fine, fair enough.
Wait a minute, that does sound quite familiar. Maybe it is a first world country now. Fair enough. Semmler. That has nothing to do with this betting segment, but it was a weird thing to say that got your attention, didn't it? Now that I've got your attention, esports bets still run their classic first-time crypto deposit of 50% on up to 200 USDT. Now let's get back to the show.
All right. Well, let's talk about some first world problems here then. Because the big news that everybody's been going on about, a little bit of that sweet drama. Sato, we woke up to find that Sato had been removed from the broadcast. Wasn't casting, instead Anders was casting with Moses. And as it would happen, Sato is removed from the major broadcast for causing a violent altercation in which emergency service had to be called to the hotel, to the venue, because allegedly Sato was blasted drunk and came back and got in a fight with Brazilian talent or Brazilian media people all around Gaules in the green room that was shared by the English speaking talent as well as by the Portuguese speaking talent, the Brazilian talent. And so apparently, here's some of the points from this story is that Sato was removed as a caster from the Rio Major. The ESL were very hush-hush about it in the sense that they had like a 1-paragraph blurb where it's just like, yeah, there was an incident that happened Friday night and he is no longer working with us. They didn't go so far as to call him an ass, but it was implied.
That was only because they were asked by the website. They weren't
they wouldn't have said anything otherwise.
Yeah, they were just going to smuggle them out the back door. Yeah.
But some of the details here are just mad. Where he comes back and he gets into okay, so incident took place. He apparently let me see here. I'm trying to find
this is the follow-up Jackson article he's talking about now where it adds some more info.
Yeah, let me go ahead and I'll just go ahead and link that article for you guys in the chat real quick in case you're interested in that. And it's also, again, remember the articles will be linked in the description below in case you want to see for yourselves, in case we miss any of the details here. But apparently the talent went out. It was a media day off. Some talent have a lot going on and some talent don't. They have a little bit more time to kick back. And so apparently a group of talent went to the beach in the afternoon and had a bunch of what I can only assume are Brazilian cocktails, like caipirinhas. So they get blasted. Sadokist comes back to a joint practice room, which is basically a green room, and in the room Gaules was there with a group of media guys, Brazilian media guys. And so apparently, according to sources from Jackson, he was pissed that they were in the room, especially that Gaules had a stream or camera ready to record. Now, hold on to that bit, especially that Gaules had a stream or camera ready to record. Okay, so note that. We'll come back to that because that's actually an important point in Sato's defense, even though there isn't much to stand on there.
Yep,
but it was clear that he was acting belligerent and aggressive. He lashed out at the Brazilian streamers being present in the English talent room. The source continued and added that the Brazilians were cool at first, but Sadokist threw a frisbee at the Brazilians and hit one of them, and that incident escalated the situation. Multiple sources tell Jackson that the altercation ended with Sadokist punching and breaking a TV, berating an employee aggressively, and then with private security and ESL, they finally managed to take him out of the room and get him to leave. And another bit of information that I got was that he got into a literal shouting match with Carmack. Apparently, Carmack showed up and tried to subdue him, tried to calm him down. Apparently, he got into a face-to-face shouting match with Carmack as well. And so that's. I mean, Carmack might be the closest thing you have to a boss while you're working an ESL event outside of Apollo. And so for you to get into a head-to-head shouting match with him, that's probably the point now. The joke obviously that I was making earlier is that, Carmack probably thought that he would do some judo or something and calm Sato down, maybe give him like a little hip throw or something and get him onto the floor, control him. But Clearly that wasn't enough because they got heated, and Sato eventually was put on the first flight out of Brazil in the following morning. So real quick, I mean, do you want to go? You want to give your thoughts, and then we can get into that topic about the cameras?
Yeah, basically the third piece that you didn't have was from the DOS2 US article. They had a piece where they said that Carmack, who's the VP product and development at ESL, met with Sadokist in an effort to calm him down and restrain him, as in like probably trying to tell him like calm down, hold his arms or something. They said despite best efforts, Sadokist did not calm down and ended up in a shouting match with the ESL executive before police arrived to the scene. Right, there's a bunch of topics I have on this one. So before we go specifically on the Sadokist angle, I would just say this. I think this looks terrible from the precedent of what happened to me. Remember, Semmler, the thing I was fired for was making comments where I basically said the country of Poland is shit and Poles have an existential hole in them for being Polish, right? By the way, none of that's racist. That's against no particular race. I'm specifically talking about Poles entirely. But I was obviously fired, and here's the key thing. I was fired in a very public manner. They themselves put a statement out the day I was fired. They themselves put in the statement that they don't associate with xenophobia and racism, and that they were saddened that, a long-time member of the community would do this. And they did all this stuff like that. Carmack involved in this, by the way. He claims he never wrote it. I've heard he basically told someone to write it that way. But now, Sadokist apparently is literally like, when they say violent, they mean like as in like violently angry, like an adjective. As far as I know, look, punching the TV is violent, but like, don't take from that like he beat someone up. As far as we can tell, he did not beat anyone up. Maybe someone tried to restrain him and maybe threw their arms off, and he's gotten mad and he's punched the TV, and he was, belligerently, I would say is maybe a better word, belligerently arguing with someone like, fuck you, well, like, I won't do what you tell me to do. Basically the end of that last 30 seconds of that fucking Rage Against the Machine song, right? So what I would say is this, is I think that is a way bigger fucking story than me saying some shit on unfiltered StarCraft 2 podcast about the country. So why is one story front and center and like decrying the person in every sense? And why is the other story like you shuffle them out the back and you have no plans on ever making a statement? Don't get that twisted, fans. The only reason ESL made that statement, it says, is in response to being requested comment by Dust2 US. Spoiler, that means the Dust2 US reporter will have just said to ESL, I already know all this and I'm going to do a story about it now. Do you want to make a comment? And so ESL's quickly decided we better at least cop to the basic facts of what we can. But even in their original statement, as you mentioned, all they say is they confirm an incident took place with him, nothing else about the incident. Anders will cast instead of him, and they have no further comments. And you ready? And they would like the focus to remain on the competition. So then why did they do all that stuff to me? You could ask. Well, there's two details I want to make here. One, to be fair, they might have actually learned from that lesson, and they might have realized why alienate talent in that scenario when something happened privately. Why make it so that then people do hate on you? Maybe they've learned their lesson. Spoiler, I would suggest the latter, Semmler, which is, if you don't know, ESL likes Sadokist. Carmack likes Sadokist. Joe Miller, the person who does the talent hires, likes Sadokist, and maybe even sees, we'll keep it at this, a little bit of himself in there with the talent, but the same demons, right? We don't need to know about that, fans, but that's something Semmler knows what I'm talking about, and everyone in the industry does. So I could see that's the distinction right there, Semmler. I have had a long time rivalry / feud with Carmack before I got fired in that scenario. So what happened there really was someone came to Carmack and said, oh yeah, by the way, one of your enemies for a long time in esports has just put himself and us in a compromised position. Would you like me to fully fuck him, sir, or partially fuck him? And he went, I think we'll go with the full fuckery scenario. And then he just wrecked me completely. Whereas, because they don't like that this was Sadokist, and they don't want anyone to know that this incident's happened. And by the way, I'll even throw this in there as well, because we'll look back in a second. I even think that camera angle one is really fucking dodgy. That almost implies, by the way, ESL fucked up with whatever they were doing with that green room. So we'll come back to that in a second. So I think as a result, they don't want it to be a story at all. They want it to just disappear. Potentially, by the way, the hope, I think, before this came out about the altercation and that, would be to hire Sadokist again. I think it's even implied, by the way, that they're not distancing themselves from him, and that hopefully you send him home now as punishment, and at the next event, you can just bring him back, because all everyone knows is an incident happened. That's it, right? Maybe could be anything. Remember, if you say an incident happened with someone drunk, it could just be that they were a bit silly and they made a fool out of themselves. It doesn't have to be that they were in some violent altercation, you know? So let's just spin back to it, because you brought it up earlier, but I noticed no fan touched on that at all. That detail is a killer for me, where it's implied that not only were Gowlers and them there in this like media room, but they're maybe about to just put a camera live streaming and like pitching to the internet while we're all had a bunch of drinks and are in a private like green room area. By the way, I wouldn't like be violent about it, but I would toss someone out instantly if I saw them doing something like that in a green room I'm in. Especially, by the way, if I've been having drinks, it's my day off. I'm on my day off. In this scenario, I don't know if people know. I think they were like finishing up some shit and they were all going to go, if you saw on social media, to go to that like Arctic Monkeys concert, like the fucking, a big gig that's in the actual like stadium that the playoffs are in. So that was even like people's fun day off. Like I'm assuming all the media things are taken care of now. So that detail, I actually think that is worth picking up on Semmler, because to me, I think that is a violation. Like you might know of past episodes of By the Numbers, me and Richard have wrecked fucking Zeus for some of the stupid shit he would do. You remember when Zeus at parties, like at after parties, when everyone's pissed drunk in the club, would just be taking videos. Places. And by the way, he didn't just do it of like him and his friends. He would just do stuff like if a hot girl, I won't say who, if a hot girl in esports was like dancing, and he'd just start filming like she's the fucking stripper or something and just uploading it to the internet for his own clout. I remember thinking like, mate, I don't care how many majors you've won and if you're a legend, that's fucked up. Like that is exactly explicitly where we're supposed to have a bit of privacy and be away from the cameras and let our hair down and let some steam off. So that part actually I do think shades in a sort of a bit of a sinister element that no one's going to look at, because obviously it's now Sadokist is universally the bad guy. But that in itself does imply something like, who wants Gowlers around you with a fucking stream speaking another language? You don't know what he's doing, filming you. I don't want that, mate.
So that is actually a part of etiquette. Like that's actually like behind the scenes etiquette that not everybody's going to be aware of. That's the thing. It's actually a key detail, and it's a key detail for us because that is our culture, in the sense that there are two places in an event where cameras are not allowed. And that's the green room, because everybody wants to let their hair down. You're on camera all day, or you're casting all day, or you're constantly around fans. And the green room is sacrosanct, i.e. no recording. Everybody can shoot the shit. You can make all the jokes you want. You can say whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about anybody recording it or catching you sleeping with your mouth open or any of that shit. It's just a safe place where you can let your hair down and relax. And so already that's one. And the other one, like you mentioned there, was Zeus, after parties. Because again, you don't want to have to worry about people recording you on the dance floor or any of that shit. You just want to be able to cut back and cut loose with some friends and blow off some steam and relax. And it's the end of the event, and there you go. No cameras, no bullshit, no Instagram or whatever. Just fucking have a good time and leave it at that, right? So there's two places, no cameras. Cameras verboten. And so, if anything, when I was reading this story, I was like, okay, I'm actually, it still doesn't justify maybe popping off to the point where it gets completely out of control, as what we've seen here, but I can get it from a caster perspective, where I would say something about it, but we're like, hey guys, maybe this is the thing. It's like, this is why, you have kind of like veterans in the sense that, like there's shit that you would learn on the way up. Okay. You're howling.
Do you know the worst part is as well? I've heard what really pissed Sadokist off is that they weren't just trying to film him. One of them kept saying in like Portuguese, like, how does this fucking camera work? I don't know, I just picked it up earlier. Like, how does it fucking, oh, wait a second. I think I've got to go and return this actually. That was hard. That was a joke, wasn't it, fans? That was just a joke. So don't worry about it. It's just, what's weird is like, I had like a little like stick.
It has this hook on it, and I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. I know.
It's just getting in the way.
It's like, this doesn't fit around my male neck,
Oh, dude.
Also, the other joke, obviously, that you do is like, no wonder people love going to Brazil. It's 100% off on cameras over there.
All right, so like, oh, man. But
Go on, let's find it back in. By the way, to be fair,
I guess it is
after this, we need to address the Sadokist angle, though, right? Because obviously he has fucked up massively with this whole thing, hasn't he? Let's be real.
He has fucked up. Like he has fucked up.
This is unacceptable. Yeah.
Like, I mean, already. Like if you're trying to be as charitable as possible, I'm like, yeah, you want to have some drinks on your day off. Yeah, nobody's gonna fault you that. But getting fucking blackout, which is apparently like what has happened, because apparently he wakes up, he's hungover, and it's just like, you can't do that. Like, you can have a few drinks with the lads, but you can't get blackout and then go back to the venue and then and not go straight to your room. It's like, what are you even doing around people at that point? You should be back in your room, just pounding water and going to sleep. You shouldn't be in a position where you're going to be around strangers that you don't know, like the Brazilian camera crew and Gallus and those guys. Like, you don't know them, and all of a sudden that's like where it could happen. Because I think if you're like English talent, you're going to know those kinds of rules where it's like no recording in the green room, just chill. Whereas now this is a little bit like, it's a little bit very minimally on ESL though, because they are mixing, and so there's clash of cultures there where it's like, okay, you're gonna have the Brazilians and the English. Maybe the Brazilians aren't aware of the rules, and it all kind of pans out and breaks down that way. Where Sadokist, that's what kicks it off. But ultimately, this is like nitpicking, and this is just kind of highlighting small details that casters would know. But there is still no way you can cut slack for Sato on this one, where it's just like, yeah, but you're still blackout, you know, like you're still drunk. And as a professional at an event, you can't be getting blackout even on the media day off, like, or at least if you're gonna get blackout, do it like just. It's like you're trying to tell him, like, you know, he's doing a shroom trip or something. Like, just do it in a safe place with people, you know. Like, what the fuck are you doing going out in the open? What are you doing going out around people and just getting absolutely annihilated?
Yeah, there's the other thing to say, by the way. Because to be fair, just because he's my friend, I can't just hide this from people. I said the same thing about config when I knew it, right? You know, I told you when I heard the config story, my problem was I knew this had happened before. Well, spoiler, this has happened before with Sadokist. He has a history, like config does, of when they have too much to drink, they become silly. And unfortunately, both of them, when it's the wrong set of people and the wrong set of circumstances, it can potentially become aggressive. I won't say violent. Like, I don't think they're people who try to hurt people and that. I don't know necessarily about config. To me, they're more just people that are sort of like, they get in an argument, voices are getting raised, they're shouting, and you hope nothing happens, and everyone goes, I'll be back, bro. And then you just fucking get on with the rest of the night, you know. But he's had a problem with this. And the problem Sadokist has is this. He's one of those people who, it's a classic story. He's got loads of talent and the equal countervailing force of demons that come with that. And unfortunately, this is why I say it's a countervailing force. Because if you had, it's like Simple back in the day when he cheated, Semmler was a dickhead to all his teammates. It's only now the fact that you're absurdly talented that means people keep giving you a chance. If you were an average Joe Blogs player, then that's the death sentence, isn't it? If you're an arsehole as a player and you cheated, we'll just get a guy who's not an arsehole and didn't cheat. But wait, there's only one Simple. And guess what? There's only one Sadokist. I mean, I won't go into the whole thing that we all know happened, but no one else even comes back from that, guys. You should go and look in other games when people get the massive, like, faux pas or something. Like, they don't even get to come back to that game ever again. Sadokist already had the enormous faux pas and got to come back because he's so good. And it's been enough years and we all just want him to commentate again. And spoiler, I want him to commentate again after this. But I have to say, like, you can't have, it's bad enough these happening privately, mate. They can't be leaking out into the public. Like, that's the other thing. It's one thing if there's like these incidents and they get swept up behind the scenes. If they leak out into the public, then it does become part of the public record. Now people do know that about you. And the reason this one kills me is because it's the same set of circumstances again, which is, if you remember the incident on his birthday, he again had been drinking a whole bunch for hours and hours and hours. Again, he was in a scenario with people who could trigger him. In this case, Twitch chat and people saying stupid shit there that was triggering him, right? Now, here's one thing that I hate about this, Semmler, is this thing that people love to do. It's a bit like Twitter culture. You know that thing where they want to take you at your lowest moment and go, that's who you really are. Or who you are all the rest of your time, all the good things you do in your life, who you are in the normal. No, that's fake. And like a little demon, you're just your worst moment. That's all you are. Well, they do this thing. You'll have seen it a million times in these discourses, Semmler, and it actually makes me sick. It's this thing they do where they claim either one of two things. One, well, how come I can get drunk and not beat people on? Are you a narcissist? Why does it matter what you do? The question is, why did he do it and what put him in that situation, right? And it's so compassionless because what they always do, you'll have heard this a million times. They go, but the thing about alcohol is it can't make you do anything you don't want to do. What it does is, like a sober man's thoughts or an alcoholic. No, I don't believe that. Because here's the thing, as someone who's been around some very talented and very funny people, what I found is what you just said, Semmler. Alcohol just removes inhibitions. By the way, inhibitions means what would stop you doing things. It's like taking off the brakes and the safety measures. And in that scenario, by the way, this is why you should never have a Zoostat character filming you. If you're someone who's really funny, like a stand-up comedian, mate, off stage in the drinking, you're going to say everything. You're going to say all the slurs. You're going to say all the crazy jokes you can't say. You're going to say the thing that you know would be offensive, but isn't because it's you and your friends or your group of comedians and you're all trying to make each other laugh in the green room. Well, in that scenario, it's absolutely not that that's who you are, because the question is, who are you in that setting? You wouldn't say those things if you were in front of like a fucking picnic at your church with your grandma there. So you can't go, but secretly we filmed you and look, this is what he would say, grandma, this is what he actually thinks. No, everyone has a life like that where they are different people to different crowds and different dynamics of relationships. So I just think it's a really fucking compassionless way to look at people, like, see, it just shows that he's actually a piece of shit and when he got drunk. No, what I would say is this, I'd say he's a troubled individual who does have talent and can be a cool guy, but can also be an arsehole. And that when he has not just alcohol, but alcohol plus then the wrong triggers around him, he responds very poorly. And I think you've seen that. I mean, put it this way, when Sadokist is sober, he already has this problem like I do, which is because of our own history. I would imagine he has a similar thing to me, where I grew up in a world where I wasn't the famous person with the microphone. I had to eat a million plates of shit and have people tell me they're better than me and all pros and more important. So I told you, I've said it a million times. When I got the mic, it was like, well, guess what? It's going to be fucking Edge City, innit? Because I'm going to say everything I want now. I'm going to say everything I wasn't allowed to say. And if I know I can't say something, then fuck it. I'm about to say it. And that's simple. And a device. I'm just going to tell these guys straight up to their face what I actually think. Well, the problem with that is it means that eventually you're going to do that. And then it's going to be the worst received statement of all time. And you're going to get in a lot of trouble. And Sado's had the same problem I have, which is we've all done the jokes. And I'd say we have a very good track record. I'd say 90% of the time we land the edgy joke. It's a really funny joke. Everyone goes, haha, what a great job dancing around the edge. I got to enjoy that too. But then the 1 out of 10 times you don't, it just, the crowd dies, doesn't it? The laughter goes away and everyone goes, oh my God, how can he say that? How can he do? So I think Sado's just another one of those people, unfortunately. He takes too many chances like I do. And inevitably you're going to have moments like this where it's going to go really badly. So I think the whole thing's tragic. But I also would say that it's like, you can't be, especially not around work colleagues, you can't be getting into these scenarios. Because the other thing is, if this was like a story like the config one, like it happened at a nightclub or something, okay, you're unlucky it got reported. This is happening on ESL premises, my dude. Like, ESL, your bosses are basically coming on. Carmack's your boss in that scenario. Like, that is a really bad look for Sadokist. That's a really bad look, mate.
What do you think about the, okay, well, there's two things that I'd like spring to mind. One is a quote that I've said in the past as well, which was that, you know, we live in a society that where everything is forgiven and nothing, or everything is permitted and nothing is forgiven.
Yes.
And so, you know, you can go wild all you want. Like you say, go wild all you want. And maybe it fits. But that one time where it doesn't quite fit, well, you know, you were permitted to do that, but now we can't forgive you for it. Right. And that's internet culture in a nutshell these days.
Yes.
And so this Sadokist situation is definitely one of those where perhaps, you know, he didn't manage to dance on that line. The other one of it is this is one of the risks that you kind of run where, like why it can be so complex with the commentary scene is that your coworkers are also your friends. And so but there's always that tension. It's hard to be friends with people with whom you're competing for a job. That definitely that's always going to be, it always makes it very it can make it very difficult. And like deep down it's always going to be like neurotic relationships in the end, because you can be the best friends, everything can be great so long as things are going great. But if ever there's a moment where it's like, hey, maybe I'm competing for this gig and maybe I'm gonna, you know, I'll get that gig and you're left in the cold, there's always going to be that little thing there in the back where it's like you're actually competing against each other at the same time. And so this is one of those weird things where it's like it is hard sometimes to fit in with the group or to really, you know, get it all together, because if you don't have a really tight social group back home, you know, who like you have your friend group and you have your friends, your family and everything that, and back home, if you're just always relying on like the friends on the road, the friends, you know, because that's the thing, when you spend all of your year on the road at events, you're just seeing the same people all the time. And so they become your friends in a way. You can wind up in situations like these where it can get really awkward real fast, because you're kicking back, having drinks with your friends, but then all of a sudden you're in a professional setting. And you know, the situation, the lay of the land changes real quick. It's not like, oh, cutting back with the friends and maybe you get in a fight. It's like, you're not at a bar. If you're in a bar and, you know, this whole thing like, oh, Sato gets in a fight at a bar, I think people don't care nearly as much. But the fact that he gets in a fight around his coworkers with other people who are working the event, and then he gets in a fight with his boss afterwards, gets in a shouting match with Carmack, that's what really throws this over, and where everybody's just like, dude, what are you doing?
Can I lighten the mood? I've got a little something that can lighten this particular story. Because here's the other thing that pisses me off, really pisses me off about this story, is that Sado got to live out my dream and he didn't even make use of it, Semmler. A lot of people don't know this. So a detail I've known his entire professional career about Carmack, he used to brag about it even in like 2001, is that Carmack famously has obsessively been a fan of judo and used to do it even like on like a semi-pro level and like national competitions and stuff. And if you know the martial art judo, it's obviously a lot of like throws and momentum-based moves. So I obviously, people don't know for fun, have done a few years of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So my dream always was, if I ever get into that altercation, Carmack leans in for the old throw, you know, one of those like umagachi or whatever they're called. And as he leans in, I sink that little fucking guillotine in, and mate, don't worry. It's not a UFC fight, mate. I don't have to worry about lasting 10 minutes. I'm just going to fucking keep that. I've got the fucking chunk that, come on, motherfucker! And I tell you what, mate, like they're going to... This hypothetically in a video game Minecraft. All I'm saying is that's the counter. So he leans in for the old throw and like, yeah, sleep.
Go to sleep. Go to
Exactly.
sleep. No,
So all I'm saying is Sado wasted it. All he did is let him just hold his arms. I'm like, get off me, Cabot. Get off me. We're in Brazil and Sado's thirsty.
Dude. I did.
And also, by the way, here's the other thing I can't handle. Matt also has a really bad trend of this. Why is everything he does so memeable? Like the original statement he made that got him in so much trouble on that stream. Like, I'm only at 50% now. I'm not even like, that's so memeable. Like, automatically the jokes write themselves. It's the same thing again. How's everyone missing this detail? He can't even just be like a rock and roll star and like trash a hotel room and throw a TV out the window. He's throwing frisbees at people. Like, catch, little bitch. What the hell is this? Why is that an element? I don't know, mate. Can't handle it, mate. Just can't handle it.
And then he tries to play it off too. I don't even know. It is just crazy that last week, by the numbers in the questions, it's the person whose curse it is to be them,
be themselves.
That, yeah. And then it's like you're going with Smooya and I'm going with Sato, and then 2 days later, Sato gets in a fight and is removed from the broadcast. Also, we can't mention this story without mentioning the fact that Anders has somehow found a way to once again cast the major, even though I think he did everything he could so that he could be at this major. Even if he wasn't commentating, he could still claim to have been at the major. Now he's casting. Turns out he was insurance all along. The architect was just sitting there going, like, the obvious joke is just, where was Anders before all this kicked off?
Yeah, I bet he was the architect and everything. The joke is, he was outside that grey room and he goes, hey, Gowlers. Like, I know they say, like, English only talent in there, but, like, go on in. I tell you what, they're all friendly. Just start popping the stream on. They'll all love to talk to the stream and that. And then Anders, and then as Gowlers... And then as Gallers went into the room, a little guy just runs up like, Mr. Anders, I got it for you. And he goes, oh, thank you. I've always wanted the Nikon 9000. And then he just goes on, because he's the architect and he's controlling the whole thing. He's controlling the whole thing.
Every angle. I have to call him and ask, how's this going to go? How's this playoff bracket going to work out for us here?
You have to realize Anders has planned this whole event so that these things will all go one by one like clockwork. It's like the beginning of the Dark Knight. At the end, he's just casting the final. Just him and Moses like, well, Jason, we're back here again.
We're back once again.
Brazil, are you hearing me? Like, just ready. Exactly. He was the architect the whole time.
It wasn't Gallus after all doing the commentary. It was Anders and Moses. Oh, he managed, one way or another, dude. He's managed to program the simulation for it to work out for him. So good on Anders. He managed to make it. But all right, let's close the book on the Sato situation. Hopefully he can come back from this. But I think it's going to be a rough one because it's just ESL. PGL Blast. Like, you don't really have too many options. So if you're burning bridges, it'll be interesting to see if ESL try to make the play that you described at the beginning of the segment, though, when you said that they're just hoping it's going to quiet down, and if they give it enough time, he can come back again, and maybe that is the play. Just shut up. He hasn't made any further tweets. No config.
That's actually a very good sign. Like yes, he hasn't tweeted. Yeah,
he hasn't tweeted. If
he'd have made it worse for himself, that would actually what would fuck you is if you double down. I think at this point, Carlos style.
So this time, yeah, exactly. No mention, no nothing, no PR, no tweet longer.
By the way, I'll just mention this because it is by the numbers and we're about the bants on this show. The thing I will never forget, though, is remember the apology he did write after the original incident on his birthday stream, where he wrote like a twit longer apologizing. But even though it wasn't phrased exactly like this, guys, it was almost like this. The gist of it was like, and worst of all, I've let down the person I respect the most, me. And I remember just reading it like, what the fuck? Like, mad humble brag is this twit log? Like, why have you put that part in? You know what I mean? If you go back, guys, check it. It was so wild the way it was phrased. It was mental, I know. It's like, I've let down the greatest person I've ever known. Me. In some ways, that's more of an offense than letting you guys down. Like, the fuck, all right. I don't know where you go with this. All right, I know. What the fuck?
All right. Well, speaking
also,
of
here's the other thing. This
like the perfect segue to the next
reason this is mad as well is because the old saying we used to have in the casting crew was like, who's going to have the meltdown this event? Now it's just like, when is Sadokist meltdown going to happen this event? Like, it sort of changed, didn't it? It's become a bit whack.
It is tragic, man. especially when he makes a comeback. Like, that's the thing. And I mean, I know we could go on at length about this.
Andy's wrecked him though, because remember, I forgot that myself. If people don't know, inadvertently, he was the one who caused all the drama at Stockholm because he had some problem with his passport where he couldn't go through Germany, and so they sent him back to Canada.
Yeah, his passport expired.
Yeah. So unfortunately, well, I believe it was that like it was more that like certain countries you can only have so much left time. It wasn't expired yet, but I think it had like a month or
6 months. You can't travel with a passport.
And
it's
in
like
Germany,
3 months or
to have
6 months or something like that.
Yeah, but that was the point. In theory, you could get into Romania, but the point is you couldn't get into Germany to go to Sweden, and you couldn't go direct from Romania to Sweden because of that story we told you all about with Belarus when they landed the fucking plane or whatever. So basically, yeah, inadvertently, he's now screwed himself out of 2 major playoffs.
2 major playoffs, and the thing is like that I was wondering about is whether or not that the first incident, the birthday stream, is what's holding him back from progressing into F1 at all. Because I mean, the whole thing, he tried to pivot into F1. He wanted to go mainstream with F1 and do all that sort of thing. I mean, that's his ultimate goal. And I wonder if the birthday stream screwed him on that, because every time you search his name, that pops up. So, you know, the fact that he got a second chance to come back here and do some CS commentary, I mean, it really does make the whole thing kind of like mega tragic, because you're just sitting here like, what is this self-destructive arc you're on, man? Because like, what do you do now if you can't cast ESL? If you can't cast ESL, Blast aren't going to hire you, and PGL isn't either after the Antwerp or after the Stockholm situation. So like, I don't know what he does next. It's going to be really rough. Well, all speculation, of course, and we'll see. But all right, moving on. Speaking about taking it light with the fans, the backhanded treatment. This is something that was worth bringing up because it actually did kind of pop off, especially in like the Swedish scene. It popped off because some Swedish fans were really just getting mad at the NIP social media. But NIP, you know, it's worth bringing up just because it's freaking funny. But like, don't let this tweet distract you from the fact that FaZe Clan choked a 15-11 lead in the CS:GO Rio Major on the final map Mirage, failing to qualify for major playoffs. And it's like, ha ha ha, gets 4,500 likes, and you know, oh, good bands, top bands. NIP getting in there. They proceed to then get knocked out themselves without winning a single map in the entire phase. And from that point forward, they proceed to just keep memeing about it, where all they do, instead of like, oh, you know, we're going to come back better or something like that, they just keep going. They just keep trying to make jokes and make light of the situation. And so it's tweeting pictures of like NIP not in the playoffs. And what else have we got here? This tweeting stuff like, unfortunately, our IM major run ends here. So this is them, I think, actually trying to be a bit more serious about it. This one tweet where it's like, unfortunately, our IM Rio Major run ends. We cannot live up to the expectations, but we're still a new team. You know, we're still a new team, and we will work hard to be to show a stronger result in the upcoming events. Thank you for your support, ninjas. I wish that they could actually write in correct English now that I'm trying to actually read that out loud. But I don't know. I was kind of curious about what you think about whether or not is there a limit to the memes, or is there a point where a team needs to take it seriously? The situation, like they lost in ignominious fashion. They didn't pick up a single map, and they kind of owe at least some kind of professional, I don't know, like some kind of level of respect to their fans, you know, whom they let down by not actually managing to do anything this event. And so rather than just constantly tweeting meme after meme about the loss, maybe you do just go ahead and give the professional one with the poster with the players, and it's like, okay, unfortunately we didn't get our results, and you just leave it there. But like, what's your take on this? Do you think the memeing has gone too far with these social media orgs? Because like these big orgs, all they do is fucking meme all day now because the engagement, I guess, because they get likes and they can farm likes, and that's a good way to get, you know, engagement on the platform. But like all of them, all they do is meme.
Problem is, that's what Twitter's for, though, isn't it? Like, Twitter's just shit posting. It's why it's so silly that they enforce like censorship so hard. Because the whole point of the forum essentially is like throwaway comments that last a second, and as you say, you're just fishing for engagement, aren't you? The problem I have is this: I don't have any issue whatsoever with the social media guy joking about it. Like, obviously, the social media guy on Twitter is not the guy who's like, pick this roster. He doesn't train them. He has nothing to do with how they perform. He's just probably a guy, maybe even in Sweden, who the fuck knows. Just his job is just come up with a million memes and silly things to tweet about. Now, the reason why people are upset is this, Semmler. I actually predicted this would happen, by the way. Years ago, when G2 first started this style of Twitter, I said, oh, get ready. The downside is this, right? It's brilliant that G2 does it because they do it with like Carlos's oversight, and he's made it really funny, and he's made it edgy, and he's made it so it actually is a compelling thing. And even he's done that clever thing where you use the things that are negatives against yourself in a funny meme to not only get engagement, like the joke basically goes, if someone's going to meme on us, why not make it us so we get the engagement? And if you do it in a clever way like G2 does, like remember how many memes they've done about all those finals they've lost 0-3 in CS. They've taken all the sting out of that now, dude. Like now no one does think like fucking loser org. You actually just think like, but they can take a joke, you know. You actually sort of think that. But that's the thing. It's like being funny. You know, people say that thing on Reddit all the time where they go, Thorin said this, but when I said it, I was downvoted. Yeah, I'm a charismatic, popular figure in the community that people want to hear from. You're Billy Nobody on Reddit. It's not about what you said. It's about who you are. So the problem is, if you're not funny or you haven't got, and this is the problem with being funny, funny isn't an objective thing. It's about being aligned with someone. They see the world a similar way to you, or they get what your intention was. If you're misaligned at all, you won't be funny anymore. And in fact, things that are supposed to be funny that don't land are sometimes the most offensive, the things that trigger people the most. Like in this case, even though they're not thinking about it, they are going to think, well, what the hell? You're like making light of going 0-3, like whatever. I had you in my pick'ems, or I thought this team was going to do something. Maybe I even bet on the game, or you promised us, you know, this was going to be a good result, and what you're just memeing on us now. Why don't you practice more? Like, I get why fans react that way. But I sort of do think that is what Twitter is now in the modern days. I don't have a problem with the intern angle. I think his problem was just like, if you look at the memes, they're kind of like low effort, you know, like they're very low hanging fruit. Like, but we had the same plating as the number one team. It's like, that's like some Jeb Bush shit. Like, please laugh, clap, please. Like, give me a break. I think they just didn't, the jokes just didn't land, basically, is my problem.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. I think it's fine. By the way, I definitely don't think like people were saying they're like, this guy's going to get fired. Like, what's he done that's fire-worthy? He's made a bunch of fucking memes. Nobody should be getting fired over this, surely.
No. But it was funny to just see like the reaction as well, just to see like the different reactions. But like some people were just getting mega triggered about it, where it's like, just stop memeing. And the memes kept coming. Much like the results of this last stage. I mean, I figured we could talk a little bit about, we should probably talk a little bit about FaZe and just the FaZe vitality. I mean, some of the teams that just didn't make it. And I guess a lot of this has to do with the format. So again, like this kind of, my perspective on this is that they've just gone far enough. ESL have just gone far enough with this format where they've pushed just far enough to have best of threes in the progressing matches and in the elimination matches. But all the matches leading up to that can be best of ones. And that's as far as they need to push for the community to be satisfied with it. And so, because if they were to go best of threes, the way that we're talking about it, where it's like, if you had best of threes, then this would be a completely different scenario, right? Because then really you're going to have like teams going deep, and then it's hard to argue that if you lose a best of three, okay, fine. You deserve that result, right? It's a best of three. We can't really argue with that. But the cost of running those events would be so prohibitive, because then you're adding extra days on the broadcast and all the cost that entails. And so I think ESL really, or like the major format, has really tried to find this sweet spot where you're going to have best of ones, and then you'll have the best of threes, just so people don't complain. Because if they could get away with it to cut down on costs, they would have all of these best of ones. Like, they would have all of these be best of ones. They would run the groups in 3 days or 2 days and just move along until the playoffs. But because
it used to be like that, remember? You used to be able to 3-0 with best of ones a few years back.
There you go. So, it's in the outcry happens, but like, do you think we ever get the outcry, like sufficient outcry, where they would change it to best of threes all the way through and get us closer to that TI format of just going deep and long, and then really having, at least when the casters, when the players can't hear the casters, you're hoping for the best results. But that's an aside. Like, what do you make of these results?
Right, here's the problem. I get the feeling, if you just look how many years it's taken to gradually improve the format, I get the feeling Valve just likes this format for whatever reason. And if the game dev decides it, like, they are the ultimate arbiter, like ESL, I don't think can force their hand in that regard. So my issue is, it's like you say, I actually think the only reason they put the best of three in that way was so it's like, well, look, they all had to win a best of three at least. It's like, that's like the excuse to stop people criticizing it. But the problem is, right, here's the issue, Semmler. It's like I said at the beginning of the episode. If you're a super casual casual fan who hasn't thought through all the second and third order effects, to you, best of ones are brilliant because it allows teams like Big to win a game they could never win. It allows Ents to win a game they could never win. It allows someone to beat FaZe who would never in a million years, you know what I mean? Like, it actually makes it more exciting for you because the variance is crazy, right? But and by the way, I don't even complain about this in every sense, Semmler. I made loads of money for esports by betting on underdogs. I just picked all the best of ones where the odds were ridiculous for like a good underdog. And do you know how many times they won? A lot of times, mate. I usually was up on that one because I was getting all the like 2.8, 3 odds and stuff. I got Liquid over Navi, for example, 2.8. That's mental. But I would never do that in a best of 3. So the problem is, I think fans, they really think that when you make these complaints that you're just saying, I wish the number one team didn't lose. But that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is this. If you seed the tournament properly and it's all best of 3, I can accept when FaZe loses. If FaZe loses 3 best of 3s, and I'll give you how like a real seeded tournament would go here, Semmler, right? So logically, in this sort of a group, ESL, in this kind of a Swiss system, if you seeded it properly, FaZe would be playing against someone like Bad News Eagles in the first game, or Sprout, or maybe Team Spirit. One of these teams would be like the worst seeded team, and that's who you'd play the first best of 3. If they lose that, that's fine. In the next best of 3, you'd then be playing against, I'm going to say, like Big or Mouse or, again, an Ents. If you lose that, fine. If they lose a third time, guys, and then they're really playing at that point against, again, fucking Fnatic or teams, I wouldn't be complaining, would I? I'd go, you know what? FaZe definitely wasn't good enough to win the playoffs here, Semmler. They've just lost best of 3s to Big, fucking Fnatic, and then what was the other one I said, like Sprout or something. And that scenario, no complaints from me. And even better, this is the more short-sighted part. If all those teams beat FaZe, I'm now really excited for the future of these teams. They've just beat the number one team in the world in a best of 3. Like, if one of those teams is going to the playoffs, like Fnatic, I'm hyped as fuck. But instead, Fnatic's in the playoffs after beating Big in a best of 3. There you go. And Furia's in the playoffs without ever playing anyone something like top 8 in a meaningful, you know what I mean? Like, this actually ruins even the underdog story. The underdog story would be so powerful if they really did it in best of 3s, guys. It would make it really amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the issue. That's what devalues it. Because if you look at who they actually win in these best of 1s leading up to the best of 3s, it's like Furia, they beat Spirit and they beat Ents. Whereas Cloud9, it's like they had to beat FaZe and Na'Vi in best of 1s before they got to Heroic. It's like, holy shit, okay. I mean, those right out the gates are already matches where it's like, that's a semifinal match. That's a semifinal match of a playoff bracket right there. And now it's going to be squandered on this best of 1 format instead of actually going the distance in the playoffs with a best of 3 that would have been sick. Or at least as an elimination match in the groups if you somehow get matched up because you're both, 2-0 or something. And then it's like, okay, fine, head to head, and let's see it in a best of 3. But instead it gets squandered with these weird matches. And then, you have teams like Furia that are advancing where they're not going to get anybody. Outsiders, kind of similar situation. They're playing against NIP. Well, actually, Outsiders didn't do too bad. Who was it that I was looking at that actually, the other team that didn't really make the cut? Was it Spirit? Yeah, Spirit, win over BNE, win over Sprout, win over Liquid. It's like none of those teams made it past this phase. And in fact, you lose to teams that did make it past this phase. So it's like a really weird sort of scenario where you have these weird best of 1s for the way that the seeding works out for these groups is just unfortunate. That you can have literally top 5 teams facing off in the first round. And I mean, that's the thing. It's always going to come back to the original argument, which is, well, that you got to play who's in front of you. But also, the reason why it is this way is because of the previous stage, because of the challenger stage, and because those teams, fucked up in the challenger stage, which also has a similar format, i.e. best of 1s going into best of 3s.
That's also what I hate, because remember, by going 3-0 in your RMR, the biggest benefit is you skip the entire challenger stage, like you say. Why do you also get a top seed? Like, the seed isn't even connected as far as I can tell. You qualified, but you got an advantage. You don't have to get potentially eliminated in the previous phase, but I think the seed is too much. The seed is what ruins it, dude, because it means that we have to live in a world where we have to pretend Vitality is the worst team because they went 3-2 in the previous phase. Vitality, again, I'll point this out out again to fans who don't get it. Like I said about the example of Spirit earlier. Furia 3-0'd guys. They did everything that was asked of them, and their reward is that they are going to lose to the team I think will win the major. That means even the system didn't work for the team that 3-0'd. That's whack.
Yeah, that no advantage. No
and
advantage.
There's even a world, here's the one people won't think about. Dude, there's also a world where, remember the other 3-0 team? Imagine this, Semmler, because this could have happened, except for the Bucalt score, right? Cloud9 had to beat FaZe, Na'Vi, and then Heroic in a best of 3. And they could have gotten Na'Vi in the quarterfinals. Well, that scenario, what have I done wrong? Am I supposed to intentionally lose games in the hopes? Like, basically, by the way, that will be the actual solution. I know no one would do it in a Swiss because it's different, but this used to happen in GSL. In GSL and round robin, there have been times where if you knew that the number one team in the world couldn't finish first in their group, you make sure you don't finish first in your group if you play later, because you'd be a fool to finish first because you can just draw them in the first round and get knocked out of the tournament. Well, no one should ever think about that in the tournament. Like, what you want are good incentives. And like I say, it's not about complaining about FaZe coming last. A team like Cloud9, or in this case, Furia did, they're going to get absolutely fucked because of how wonky the format is and how much it allows for these ups and downs. And then just look at a team like Big, right? Remember, Big actually went 2-0 here. They beat Sprout and Mouse. Now, why didn't they get out of the tournament? Or they got 2-0 by every team they played because they weren't actually a good team. They just fluked a couple of BO1s against lesser teams at that. And how the fuck are they playing, by the way? Big is playing Sprout first and then Mouse in their 1-0 game. What is the point in the tournament at that point? Because as you say, people are getting caught in the weeds on this one. It's not that like people like Big and Sprout were like upsetting all the best teams in the world. They just got these ridiculously lucky draws.
Yeah, Sprout had Big, and then they had Liquid. And Liquid, just notoriously on the fence throughout this tournament, really struggling. Liquid got 2 wins. Although, to be fair, like the weird thing about Liquid is they then managed to get a best-of-1 win against Na'Vi on Ancient, where it's like, it's so inconsistent. But that's the thing. It's like, it's not that Liquid are a good team. It's that Liquid are a wildly inconsistent team. Because Liquid can lose to a Mouse Sports and then still go on to beat the top 2 team in the world. And then not qualify for the actual event itself by losing in best of 3s to Heroic and then Spirit. So like that's not even a good result in that sense, because it's just like, you can't even count on Liquid in terms of performance. You don't know where to place Liquid in this match. So if it's a best of 3, it's maybe a different scenario there. It's just a weird. But do you see any hope that they could actually change it to best of 3s? I don't think so, especially if we're going to go into this period where costs could become even more important than they are now, unless Valve were to try and subsidize even more of the cost involved in running the major. If you're adding days onto the broadcast with no direct return on viewership, like the only way I think that you could actually start arguing for a better format is if it has an impact on viewership at this point. And I don't see how the average fan is going to be if it may be that because we don't have FaZe, because we don't have Vitality, because we don't have Liquid, we don't have big names to draw fans in. Maybe this would be enough. This major could be enough if there's enough of a drop in viewership because you don't have those big names that they could start to try to reconsider the format. But otherwise, I don't see them making any changes because, there's a small minority, i.e. us, who are out there actually talking about this.
Here's what I would do. I would take the first phase of the major, the Challengers stage now, that used to be called the Major Qualifier. And by the way, interesting detail, HLTV doesn't count as the major. They actually still count that as like a different phase. If you go into the Majors tab, they don't count that in people's Majors things. So I would actually make that, like it was in the past as the Major Qualifier, a separate event. Don't hold it in the same country as the main place. Hold it in wherever the RMRs are or whatever, and have everyone meet together in Major Qualifier. Then what I'd do is this. Take the week that would have been the Challengers phase and just extend out this Swiss system to last like a week and a half and play best of 3s. Like this, the major used to be 16 teams. Why would you increase it to 24 and then go, well, now that I've artificially painted us into a corner, nowhere we can go? It's like, you chose to do that. Like, whoa, no, go back. Like, we have to go back. Fucking Lost reference, right? In this scenario, like, why can't we just have best of 3 for the 16 teams? Oh, there's another one. Keep your shitty fucking first phase as like the qualifier, like it is now and just make this Swiss system best of 3. Maybe that in that case, because again, even with bad seeding, by the way, the really elite teams would almost certainly win the 3 best of 3s. They just managed to do it because they're that good. So I think there are compromises you can make it. The question is, are you willing? Like, is Valve willing to compromise whatever it is? And unfortunately, from seeing how in League of Legends they've done it with the BO1s, I actually think these game devs naively think it is a positive. Because remember, in the moment that the team is getting upset, it does feel really exciting. Like, dude, you can't believe it when you see, like, fucking hell, like, holy shit, FaZe just lost it. Like, that, in the moment, it feels exciting. But the problem is, when you've been around long enough, it sort of messes the rest of your tournament up for you. So, that, like, yeah, but it's, I'll give the analogy that no one will be able to understand because you're all so good. It's like stimulants. When you take stimulants, they feel mega moreish in the moment, but guess what? You pay the cost for that the next morning. You get the really hard come down, don't you? It feels terrible. So in this scenario, like the high of the crazy BO1 upset, it isn't worth it in the long run, unfortunately. It kind of does ruin the rest of the tournament.
That's 100% it. It actually, I mean, it spoils the tournament at that moment because you just know it's going to be worse. And then of course, like you can call it almost with 100% accuracy most of these times where it's just like, oh, okay, so you get the massive upset win over FaZe in a best of 3. You are almost certainly going to lose in the next round. Round.
Both of them did, dude. ENCE and BNE. So there's the other angle. You're just hating on young guys coming up. No, they didn't even win. They didn't get through, guys. Both of those teams took out tournament favourites and then just shit the bed immediately against the next squads and just got eliminated almost without incident. It wasn't even like it was great. Like, that's really sad because what it shows is, like, you had one-off performance. By the way, individually, those performances were great. The one Flatru guy was owning against FaZe. Obviously, Sun Pius was a monster against Vitality. The problem is, they're not actually like legitimately world-class teams. So they had the Cinderella moment and then they fucking woke up and it was just back to reality, innit?
Whereas, now we're denied FaZe, we're denied Vitality in this top 8. And from a production point of view, you're not, from a tournament organizer point of view, you're not cheering for those upset wins. Those upset wins aren't going to net you more viewers. It's having the FaZe, it's having the Vitality, the name brands in that top 8 that's going to get you more viewers and potentially break that record. So from a whole bunch of perspectives, it sounds exciting, but it's detrimental in a bunch of different ways. And so of course, we're going to be arguing that we need to be rethinking this and trying to figure out a way to get more consistent results, to have better storylines and more consistent storylines and more consistent viewership where we all benefit overall.
I'll tell you something a bit awkward as well, Semmler. We won't touch on the reasons why, but I'm just going to put it out there, right? Because of what's happened in this tournament, guys. Well, there are obviously 8 teams in the playoffs and you have 5 players per team. So there are 40 players in the playoffs, right? Of the 40, half of them, 20, are like CIS region players. Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Russia. I know Ukraine technically isn't in the CIS anymore, but it's a colloquial term that we use for the region, obviously. In the same way as people often misname fucking Finland as being in Scandinavia or whatever, whereas it's technically just is a Nordic country. You're supposed to use Nordic instead of Scandinavia, right? So that's one that people always get like slightly missed on that one. But what I would say is this, right? The country with the most representation of players in the major by far now is Russians. They have 14 players in the playoffs, right? And because of outsiders and more specifically Cloud9, there's even a world where a Russian team might even win the event. I'm not going to say any more, but I'm just saying it's a bit awkward, isn't it? There's even a world, by the way, it's pretty likely that we're going to have Ukrainian team Na'Vi play against majority Russian team in the final. Like, luckily we're in Brazil, so hopefully that no one even draws any aspersions, but that could go so badly in so many different ways, couldn't it? I know. It's so awkward, mate. It's so awkward. Because the thing is, there's a good point to make behind this, though. This is why you want to see talent-rich regions get the right teams for people to get a chance. Because what you've found at this major is, man alive, the next talent group of players is all in that region. Like think about this. People are still trying to sell themselves that like OC might one day become like a world-class opera. Dude, the wonderful guy is playing his first major. He's played something like 2 or 3 lands that are relevant. He's a 17-year-old Ukrainian and he is fucking dominating people. Like that's the difference in talent. Like you're hoping OC makes it. This guy's like good already. Then you look at the rest of them, like Patsy we already knew was good anyway. He just keeps being good. If you go down the list, fucking who else was it from the other teams? Let me think. Oh, obviously the Fame guy from Outsiders has been a revelation. Like the talent in that region is unbelievable. Like, they have like a crop of players that's come through. It's why it's so tragic that you've got all these real world scenarios that mean some of them get locked in their scene or can only play at majors and don't get to be in the big tournaments because man, like this could have also like Counter-Strike could get so much better with this level of competition of player coming in. These are some mega talents.
You wonder if there's going to be some kind of parallel scene.
It's implied there would be, yeah.
Russia, right? And it's just going to probably...
If the sanction stuff never gets lifted, it was implied they'll make their own little scene. By the way, it'll probably be like that brick shit. They'll do it with like fucking China and the other one, and they'll make a little internal circuit, yeah.
Yeah, make it an internal circuit and just and continue to progress there. I mean, that is one of the major points that we've brought up time and time again, is that it is cheap, like cost of living is cheaper in the CIS region right now. And so contrary to a player who's trying to start off in like Denmark or Switzerland or whatever, well, Denmark may be because the schools are actually trying to feed the talent, that may not be the best example, but like France or elsewhere, you just don't have like there's the rise and grind kind of mentality over there, where it's just like if you win one of those online cups, you're good, you're set for a couple of months and you can keep playing. Whereas, so you're just going to be able to constantly be in this situation where you can just go hard. And then if you can win, it can go a long way. So I think culturally, they're just set up to have those guys who are hungry and who are just going to just nonstop try to get that win. Also, like there's just huge success stories coming out of there as well. Whereas like Na'Vi, you know, it's like, I think there's a lot, like Na'Vi just hit they just pulled off the perfect one. There's two success stories really with the academy setup, and that's Mouse Sports having pretty much their 4 out of 5 of their academy team moving up to the main roster and being able to perform and actually get into a playoff set of Major. That's a pretty huge success story as far as the Academy League is concerned. But the other success story is finding a wonder kid like Monacy and selling him for several $100,000 to one of the rich Western organizations. I mean, that is also it. So it's like the attention from the CIS region is not going to go away. You know, you're going to be trying to find the Monacys. You're going to be trying to find the Wonderfuls. And in the CIS region, that's where the money's going to be at, because then if you can get a contract signed with those players, you're in a position to either bring them up onto your team and benefit, or sell them for huge money and, you know, use that to fund your team going forward. So the focus is not going to drop away from the CIS region anytime soon. If anything, that is the future of CS, is going to be that region. It's crazy. Or Northern Europe, really. Northern Europe, CIS, everybody's connecting to these servers. And back when we used to have access to that information, once upon a time, we used to be able to see the regions and like who was connecting from where to the different Valve servers. And far and away, the Northern Europe servers are the ones that are the big ones. So this is that is still the region, Europe and CIS. That is actually something that was worth mentioning as well. Real quick, we can touch on it, but the way that things are set up, you know, as far as the region is concerned, like EU dominance is still very much a thing, and so this is an article that came out on .esports today, I believe. Yeah, today it came out a little bit earlier today. Blast Paris CS:GO Major's distribution of regional spots is set. And so if Valve keep the same rule book it's used for the Brazilian Major, there will be 7 spots for Europe in Blast Paris Major Legend stage and only 1 spot for Americas, as a result of only Furia reaching the playoffs of IAM Rio Major together with 7 teams from Europe. So as for the Blast Paris Major Challengers stage, there will be 10 European teams, 4 teams from Americas, and 2 teams based in Asia if Valve uses the same rule book. So we're going to continue to see more and more European dominance. And the only way that changes is if those teams start going deeper. So you need the Americans teams, you know, to make it deeper into the tournament, to make it into the playoffs. And you need the Asian teams to earn their way and make it deeper into the tournament. Otherwise, you don't get any more spots. So we're going to start seeing this be the model, it looks like, that Valve wants to use for the majors going forward, where it's almost a meritocracy. You need to earn your spots. Otherwise, you're just not going to be giving them to them because it makes some analysts happy.
The only problem I have is again, you've just fixed a problem you created. So when you had the major qualifier, there was no problem. Who gives a shit how many slots you get? If you can't qualify through the major qualifier with everyone else, you don't get to the major anyway. That took care of the problem, in my opinion. They just went back on themselves and removed that concept, didn't they? Just made it separate RMRs. So now it is a problem of how many slots does an RMR get? Because obviously, if people don't know, this particular America's RMR was one of the most piss weak you'll ever see. And they had way too many slots to the major itself. And so you got all these joker teams that were getting there, and it's like, who the fuck did they even play? And the joke is almost no one, and half of it was all those BO3s to decide the seeding. So, like, look, in my opinion, if you just go back to having a tournament before the major, then you don't have to worry about slots, because they still have to do it against the other teams. The reason the major qualifier works, if you don't get it, guys, is because you just put all the regions together and say, right, whoever's good gets to the major. It's not about regions.
And then yeah, you can actually then that is the thing. And now that you mention it, that is actually a thing. Like it used to be that we had more South African teams, for example, showing up because you had ESWC, you had Copenhagen Games, you had these wide open lands, DreamHacks back in the day. There were DreamHack qualifiers at the venue, so that could feed into the main tournament of a DreamHack Summer or Winter. That used to be a thing, and then those are all gone now. So those scenes are pretty much just like South African scene. It's hardly moving at all unless you count some of the players that managed to get out of the scene and get over to North America and play there, JT, etc. But yeah, it's just something to consider that going forward, these spots are going to be it's going to be competitive for these spots, but it really does feel like CIS EU, and mainly perhaps because the CIS region is so much of the EU scene now, that it's going to be that they're going to have the lion's share of the spots. All right, let's talk about the playoffs real quick before we get into questions. But have you seen the bracket? Did you see the matchups?
On the playoffs of this major? Yeah, I've already done all the content, mate. Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, you've already done all the content on it. Yeah. Like Cloud9 versus Mouse Sports, Furia versus Navi, Heroic versus Spirit, and Outsiders versus Fnatic. I mean, we don't need to get too nitty gritty with the details, but I just wanted to get your thoughts real quick on like which one we've already talked a bit about Navi Furia, obviously.
Basically, the problem is I just think the favorite wins all four of these games. Like, here's the good news for you guys. Not just because there's like big favorites here, but I also think each of them has gotten exactly the right opponent to make them guaranteed to win. So the good news is, as bad as the quarters are, I think the semis are going to be amazing, because I think it is going to be Outsiders against Cloud9, Heroic against Navi. And by the way, those are even semis you'd want. Here's what I'll give you the angle, because I didn't do this angle on the other ones. The reason why you would want Cloud9 to play Mouse is because Mouse themselves are 3 academy players last year who have fuck all experience at majors, and so perfect if you're Cloud9, who themselves have shown a little bit of fragility sometimes on big stage setups. You have no reason to be afraid. If anything, you look over the stage and they're pissing themselves way more than you were. In fact, that's you at Stockholm. You can just look over and go, fuck, I remember that. Yet that's hard to go through the first time. Good luck, mate. And also on top of that, even think of the players they have on the Mouse side. They don't have a single player who's better than his counterpart on Cloud9. I actually think Cloud9, this will be a brilliant pick-me-up, and they will just run roughshod over this one. Then go to Fnatic Outsiders, right? Outsiders normally is a team you want to be an underdog. You want them to be the team that no one's predicting to win, and then they can do that tricky style of play, draw you into the deep waters, make it a bad game, and somehow win out. They don't even need to. They're playing Fnatic, who with this lineup, like a couple of them were on Copenhagen Flames, who did nothing in playoffs every time they were there. And the rest of them, like, they're not a big fragging team. The IGL angle of Mezzy, he's not a bad IGL. He ain't Jim, mate. Jim's a much better. I think, again, every angle goes to Outsiders. I think they're just a strong favourite here. I think they'll outperform. And they've even played this team in the best of 3 tournament and utterly shit on them, which I don't think will be the same game, but they utterly destroyed them. So they've got the psychological advantage. Then go to Heroic and Spirit, right? Heroic themselves can be a bit ropey sometimes. We all know when they're a big favourite, they lose, right? Spirit has players. Like, look, it's amazing that Wonderful did all that stuff. He is still 17. If I had to bet, he'll have at least one map where he'll just be average as fuck in this match. Whereas Heroic have been in all these quarters, guys. They've been in the semis. They lost to Navi in one and G2 in the other with inspired Nico and Simple and electronic performances. That ain't going to happen against Team Spirit. Logically, Team Spirit is one of those teams that, like, this is as far as they're going in the tournament. They can frag a little bit. The map pool's not even that great. Heroic's sort of favoured there. And then the last one, Furia versus Navi. Look, if you were Fnatic, Mouse, Spirit, you'd be worried if you had to play Furia. Furia might blow you out the server. They've got some skilled players. You're going against Navi, where if all you have is firepower, which is all the Furia guys have, probably the worst team ever. They got you neutralized immediately. And then on top of it, all those clever smokes you do, Blade and Simple and all the others are going to have gone through those demos, mate. So I actually think if you want the favourites to win, which I think will set up the good bracket, that's what you've got the right teams to do it. Like, I think if you swapped around some of the matchups, you could get some upsets. The Heroics of the world, the Cloud9s maybe could lose, but I don't think they do in this scenario. So luckily, I think the semis are bangers. I think Cloud9 Outsiders is just a great regional matchup we've seen a million times. Both teams, it would be interesting for either to make the final. And Heroic Navi has probably been the most consistently good fucking match in the last year on LAN. These guys always have great games when they play against each other. Always 3 maps, always fucking back and forth, always like I mean, here's the weird thing. I think because when they play Na'Vi, they're always the big underdog. Heroic always seem to perform in those games, mate. They always seem to pop up. They don't seem to get affected by the pressure because they're just, it's almost that thing of like, you're not supposed to win. So it takes the pressure away. So I actually think these could be amazing semis, though. I'm really looking forward to the potential of the semis in the final. I think it could save the tournament.
That can be it. I mean, it's just like the obvious joke has always been right from the start. As soon as you see it, this is Navi's tournament to lose. So any other result, if Navi somehow were to lose against Furia, at that point, Furia had damn well better win the whole thing. Yep. They better live that Cinderella story and just go all the way and beat Heroic and just have the crowd behind them the entire way. The only problem is that they will have the crowd behind them the entire way in this series, but Na'Vi are pretty much the only team that are capable of withstanding that pressure from the crowd and also just silencing the crowd outright. Because as you say, firepower, they're too dominant in every position as far as Na'Vi are concerned. They have equal firepower to shut you down, and so they can shut you down round on round. And then when that place gets quiet, that's when the crowd cuts both ways. Because it's awesome when they're cheering for you, but when you have 18,000 fans who are there to see you and cheer for you and you're losing, that fucks with players, man. That's really brutal to deal with. And the Brazilians don't really have that many opportunities to do that, to deal with that kind of pressure in the circuit. They never get to play at home. And Art said this in one of the interviews, in one of those moments where he's just like, yeah, we're always playing in EU. This is like the first time it feels like we're playing at home. And it's like, yeah, because you're always on the road. You're in North America, you're in Europe, you're never playing in front of a home audience. So there's even a learning curve here for Furia, just as far as playing in front of the home fans and what that's going to feel like and how that's going to mess with your head in those key moments where maybe you fuck around up and the whole place is quiet and then you're just sitting there being like, oh shit, like these guys are here to cheer for me and I'm fucking up. Like that's something that Fury are going to have to figure out how to deal with. So it's like you laid out, I mean, Furia could not have got a worse first opponent. I feel like against anybody else, they had a shot. Because even, then at that point, it's like, hey, even if they get Cloud9, I think they have a shot because then Cloud9, they're not, dealing with the fans going hard against them the entire time.
That would be an interesting angle, right?
Cheering against them.
Exactly. Yep.
Like you would have an edge perhaps if you were Furia in that sort of scenario, right? So like, it literally could not be worse for Furia. So to be fair, I kind of feel bad for Furia. I kind of feel for him on this one because it's like, dude, you could not have gotten a worse draw. It sucks. It really sucks to see. But Na'Vi should be the ones to pull through. Like that's got to be the prediction here. This is Na'Vi's championship. This is their tournament to lose now at this point.
I mean, what's wild is if you're any other team, I actually think for real, the Na'Vi Furia series is the one you're praying goes the other way. Because if Furia somehow does beat Na'Vi, all of a sudden, those three other teams I mentioned, Cloud9, Outsiders, Heroic, they have a chance to win the major now, mate. Like, suddenly, like, if you're Heroic, for example, mate, imagine how excited you would be if Furia wins. Like, I have to beat Furia and then either Cloud9 or Outsiders to win the whole thing. Like, dude, that can do this. Like, fuck, like, feeling pressure. Like, in this scenario, this is like my one chance to win the world championship. But I actually do think, sadly, despite all this jazz we've talked about, like, it is just the predictable inevitability that, like, Na'Vi's going to win. By the way, I know it hasn't happened yet, but I actually think that would also, in its own way, be a cool storyline. Like, think about the bounce back from the whole conflict scenario and then Boomich having to be fired and then losing the last major and losing the clone fight. Like, if you can come back and you're in 3 straight major finals and you win 2 of them, hey, that's like a pretty good fucking story turnaround, right? It shows that it wasn't the end of the world, all that stuff that happened.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a good point to leave it on. And actually, we should probably hop into the questions now. I'm looking at the time. We're at the bottom of the second hour, and so guys,
hope there's some good ones now. They're not just like, "What is love?" Because we got into that point on some of these questions now. They're getting ridiculous, aren't they? It's so abstract, I know.
All right.
How can you be sure you have love in your life? Like, fucking hell, come on.
You might have a sense of it. All right, GROGcoin questions. All right, guys. So questions every week from GROGcoin holders. If you're interested, hop in the Discord. We'll have the link below or the link in the chat now. If you're interested, you can check the GROGcoin Lounge. That should have the information on how to go about getting your hands on GROGcoin. It supports the channel. It supports us. And if you hold a certain number of them, you get to ask questions each week. So it's another cool way to support the show. So appreciate it. And a big appreciation, of course, everybody who's been tuning in. And, if you made it this far, good on you. But, okay, let's hop right into it. Architect of Korean esports based Joe. How does one enjoy a professional Overwatch League game? Any tips to focus on any specific area so the entire game doesn't look like a clusterfuck? Well, unfortunately, that is pretty much the reality of Overwatch League or Overwatch as a game. Is just that it is a clusterfuck. So like, it's just the most chaotic game. It's the hardest game to cast that I've ever had to cast, because it's just, you have to be so specific with what you're talking about and trying to direct people's attention, because it's so there can be so much shit going on with all the abilities and the ultimates, and you're trying to build up to this moment, something hits the wire, like you have to be really on the nose as far as commentary is concerned. So it's like, I hope that you have a good commentator to listen to who can do a good job of directing your attention, but also, I mean, it is going to be time. It's like Dota or LoL. Like, you have to actually have at least a base level understanding of the game to have any appreciation for what's going on. And so, unfortunately for you, I'd feel like it's either time on the server playing the game or just time watching it, because then you're going to start picking up like, okay, this is the meta and this is what I should be watching out for right now. We're going to be looking for the Sombra ult. We're going to be looking for this, that, or other, right? And so you're going to start picking up like how certain maps are played and what the usual strategy is. And once you have a decent idea of like what the usual strat is, what you should be keeping your eyes open for, like what key ultimates or whatever, like a Sombra ult, for example, could be, you're waiting for that, then you're going to be able to watch for that, and you won't need the commentator to tell you exactly what to be looking for. So just time, but like, yeah, pay attention to the meta and pay attention to like key ultimates. So like the meta is we're looking for the meta, and it's like the Zarya ult, Graviton or whatever the fuck, like you're looking for a good Zarya grav. Okay, so there, watch for that, and so you can kind of focus on that, focus on the ult, focus on like the key aspect of the meta at the time. Did you watch much Overwatch at all? When Overwatch was going
I used to do a talk show for the first year and a half or something.
What
I would say is, I actually found it quite an enjoyable game to watch. I thought it was a good game. I understand why fans can't watch it. It was too much stuff going on. What I would say is this. I had to learn American football like this. So I actually think the two sports are quite comparable, because even though there's the ball in American football, every player is doing something. And if you don't know what they're doing, you're going to think like, oh, look, the wide receiver's just made a great run. Like, no, what you don't realize is, why was he open one-on-one with one of their defenders when he's the main wide receiver? Because if you actually looked at how the formation was, the offense ran a play that drew like the safety over the other side of the field, and the tight end looked like he was going to receive the ball. So the other help defender came over, and then suddenly the best player was isolated. So basically, when you start watching it, break it down like anything complicated into constituent parts. So in the same way as in my analogy about the NFL, initially you're just looking for who is he throwing it to and how do they do when they receive the ball. But after that, once you've got those basics down and your eye's able to see that, you're going to then build in a second layer, aren't you? You're going to then figure out, how did he get open to? How did this guy avoid like the fucking edge rusher to be able to throw that? Like, did someone block for him? You're going to like gradually build it up. So what I would say in Overwatch is this. The first thing to do, and it's simple, is just pick a DPS player that you like. Someone who's really good on Tracer or something like that, or Widowmaker or whatever. Just watch them initially and enjoy the fireworks. Just watch them aiming. Then try and figure out, why does sometimes a Tracer not get a pop off? How can they not work? So then I'd probably look at like how the main tank works and how he creates space and how he goes it. Then gradually build up the support. Figure out, that's like the utility of the game essentially. Like, what are they doing from the background to set up or to heal the DPS or to get you back in a position? And like, you just build the game up gradually. So what I would do is I would start with the most fun part, in this case the most action-packed part. Then I'd go to like a fundamental constructural part, like blocking, or in this analogy the tank or whatever. Then I'd go to the nuanced aspects of, how does the support play, how does the off-tank play. That it's going to be more complicated. And the key thing to understand, so I gave the NFL analogy, is, I'll give you the quick analogy that I'll use. In CSGO, people always complain about any new UI. If someone makes a new HUD, they always complain. Now, one of the reasons you're complaining, guys, is because your eye hasn't yet mapped where everything is. So initially, it's awkward. But what's funny is, an overlay you might not like in 6 months might be your favorite. Once your eye knows, like automatically, this is where the map thing's going to be. This is where the ammo is. That's where. Once your eye tunes into it, it's not signal noise anymore. It all means something. So basically, when you've followed these games long enough, your eye also can see a lot of this action. Like the guy who's the commentator, he's not only watching the DPS players crosshair, he's also noticing like, right, he's about to kill this guy anyway. Oh, I can see that the tank's just done a really good thing over here. Like he's able to take it all in, but initially you won't be able to. So just start with the simplest part and build it up slowly. And by the way, if you don't like it, you don't have to watch that game. Good thing about esports is a million great types of games. You can watch CSGO, you can watch Dota. They all cover different angles of sort of what esports can be.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of having a variety of games to pick from. Even if it's like major genres, I mean, if you have League of Legends and you want to go deeper, you go Dota. It's you got that.
But that's what I can't handle. I get if CSGO fans tell me they don't like watching Overwatch. Dude, I used to have League of Legends fans tell me, think about these two things. One, they'd go, I can't even see what's happening in the fight. Have you ever seen fucking League of Legends, Hobie?
Come
It's
on.
just all spells going on. It's nothing. It's garbage. It's way worse to watch. And then also, there's not even like the high skill, like crosshair element of Overwatch. Like League of Legends, I remember saying this back in the day. I'll say it again because it's funny. I remember thinking like, oh, like I knew what Dota was like. I remember thinking like, oh, I'm sure there's a lot of skill in these MOBA games. And I remember saying to someone like, right, so there's only 4 abilities. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, that sounds a bit whack. And then he was moving. And I was like, why are you moving in that really weird way? Why don't you just move backwards? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, wait a minute. You move with the same cursor that you also attack with. They were like, yeah. I was like, this is like some Fisher Price esports. What the fuck are you talking about? This is for little kids.
Champions, homie.
Yeah,
You're looking for Bloodline champions.
That's the joke. I wanted like some super high. So the joke is like, if you're from League of Legends, you idiot, you just don't know that your game's trash. You just play it so you know what it looks like. You know what a Janna ult does. Like the other person doesn't if they never watched it. They're like, what's this shit? You know?
There you go. All right, Butt Pounder 420. Which fictional language, such as Elvish, Klingon, Finnish, etc., is your favorite?
By the way, here's the thing. I actually don't say this about most languages. Most languages do sound like they're just interesting, different. Finnish does sound like someone's just playing a practical joke and you've done it like, what are you even talking about right now? Is this a joke? Are you trolling me right now? Are you just a really drunk Swedish guy who's just fucking with me? Like, what are you doing? Like, no, that is a bad one.
Tommy did one tweet once where it's just like, it's an actual Finnish sentence. It makes sense. It's a word, but you can apparently just keep adding.
They have it like German, apparently similar, where like in what you do with the grammar and the way the word goes is the word just gets longer and longer and longer instead of being like, yeah, exactly. So you can get like just like in German, you can get like some word that has like 30 characters and something.
And apparently it makes sense like that. It's a totally, it totally works. I was like, this doesn't make sense. This can't work. Can't work this way.
Do you have a favorite fictional one though?
No, not that springs to mind immediately. What would be yours?
I'm not sure actually. Like, what would actually be for that?
I never really.
I never thought Elvish sounded that cool. Klingon sounds shit.
No, Elvish. Like really it's like I'm a big fan of Tolkien, but like, am I going to go out of my way to learn Elvish? No. I'm having enough trouble learning Swedish as it is, and that's a fictional language as far as I'm concerned. So I mean, what's yours? What do you have anything that goes on your side?
No, I don't think I've got one for that one.
No,
there's nothing wrong with the question. I just don't have an answer for it.
Yeah, no, that's kind of got a punt on that one. Sorry. All right. It's Young Badger. Which athletes or teams do you actively follow from outside of esports currently? Oh, mainly just high-level grappling. So ADCC, like ADCC just happened. I've watched all the matches maybe like twice now. So many good matches at ADCC. It was the most competitive, just freaking amazing. So yeah, the submission grappling, BJJ. That's pretty much what I watch. So Gordon Ryan, I mean, he's just the king. Big fan of the B team. Craig Jones, those guys, they're super sick as well. So B team is a good team to follow. New Wave with John Danaher, also a good team to follow. Lots of just freak beasts in those teams. Really exciting matches, really good stuff. So mainly grappling is what I'm following these days.
I almost exclusively just follow specific players or teams. So, like, for example, I watch Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers in the NFL. I watch, like, Djokovic in tennis or Nadal if they're in, like, a final or a semi-final. I watch Ronnie O'Sullivan in snooker. It's mainly just players I follow at this point in time. Yeah.
Like, the thing with, like, grappling is, like, Gordon Ryan is pretty much, he's just so head and shoulders above the rest that everybody watches him. Like, you can't help but watch him, so it's kind of cliche, or, it's mainstream to say Gordon Ryan, you're not going to really catch anybody off guard, but like you do watch like every Gordon Ryan match religiously because he's going to break the meta and just clown on some guy and make him look like a white belt when the guy's been doing jiu-jitsu for 20 years, it's amazing. So, yeah, big Gordon Ryan fan. All right. Hinoda, if you were in an open field armed with a metal bat and a horde of 14-year-old CS fans comes running at you, how many could you take down before being overrun?
I could get loads, but that's also because I'm not just now in defensive mode. They probably also tweeted at me. So in this scenario, I would be like that movie you remember that movie with Mel Gibson, Signs, where the Joaquin Phoenix character, it was like, like swing, whatever. Like, I'd just be like, that guy's fucking crack. Man, I'd be like the fucking bear, but oh, it'd be amazing.
No, dude. I feel like this one is yeah, obviously you want to say loads. Then you got to wonder like which fans are they? All right, I'm punting. Santiago Lafarga. All right, I generally find acquired taste to be more rewarding, especially in relation to art. Although I'm not proud of it, you could say I sometimes look down on the masses when it comes to certain tastes. At the same time, if someone finds enjoyment in simpler art and that becomes a vessel for their love of life, isn't that a more desirable outcome? I wonder to what extent can the quality of art be objectively gauged? To what extent is it tied to the enjoyment of the viewer? So
I've got a little mini rant for you. Are you ready?
All right, go for it.
No, beauty is not in the eye of the beholder. Maybe read like Roger Scruton or something like that. It absolutely
Sure,
is
there
not
you
the
go.
case.
Scruton's a good
Or the ancient Greeks. I think absolutely there is an objective standard of things like beauty. And I think what happens is, this is the genius. If people have managed to degrade your standards, then yes, you will think more things meet your standard. So here's the reason why I know Semmler, that it's not as simple as that shitty universalist thing he tried to back out into there. Like, but maybe they just enjoy simpler things and that gives them their opinion. Here's why I know it doesn't. I'll give you the example. Because I've always been someone who had a super intense personality and I wanted things to be excellent. So famously, for example, in the movies like The Dark Knight Rises, for example, I've always said these are really good movies, but then the third act has a lot of flaws and it makes the movie sort of not as cool at the ending. Like it fails some of the things it was doing, right? And it becomes not as good. Everyone else is like, just enjoy it, bro. Like the rest was sick. Like the first 2 hours, like, no, but it could have been the best ever. So what I would say is this: if you're the guy who instead's like, I just go for fun and I enjoy myself. If you're the guy basically who watches every Adam Sandler movie, every year, 1 or 2 Adam Sandler movies come out, and you go, you know what? I'm in. Ticket for Adam Sandler, please. What I would say is this: when I watch an amazing piece of art that is incredible and transcendent, I do get a feeling of like what's possible in the imagination, how incredible the vistas of like what you can even dream up, what the boundaries of human experience are, what like meaning can actually be imbued within everyday things and mythological. I get this incredible sensation. Do they get that from Adam Sandler? Of course they don't. That's why when they watch every year, by the way, they're watching 1, 2 Adam Sandler movies. They must be the happiest people on earth, Semmler. They're getting all that enjoyment from art. And no, it's just about, it's just upon a banana peel. It's that level of shit. There's nothing to it. It's just fucking surface deep in it. Like they're not getting some amazing experience out of it. That's why he has to do one every bloody year.
That's why the statues and the classical architecture, like there's no such thing as like an ugly classical building with like pillars in front and well, I can't even remember the terms. It's been too long now, but you know what I'm talking about, right? You're thinking those like the Greek style that it became so popular in Europe and then over in North America. But like those things are transcendent. They're timeless because they actually do speak to that objective beauty that you talk about, right? Those statues, right? The beautiful statues of heroes and beautiful ladies and all that sort of thing. Like those things give you something to aspire to. And so the old cities, you can go to the old cities and you can see all of these statues that are inspiring around you. And they're telling you something that there's a tradition and there's a culture and there's something that was worth, trying to be bigger for. And then you go ahead, like in Stockholm, you see a lot of this trash, and it's really frustrating. Like right around my street, actually, it was like mild depression or just that mild like where you're just driving around and they've put in some like the statue that they must have spent money on now is some fat. It's like a statue. It's a statue of a fat dude sitting in his boxers, reclining in a chair like that. I guess sunning himself, and it's like yes, okay, so I should aspire to be the fat guy sunning myself in a deck chair. Like that's what I need to aspire to. It's not like and then we went to an old town where there's this massive statue of just this knight with the sword and all the the horse and everything. You're just like, or I could or that, or like give me more of that. So no, you're right. I mean, it's what you're around, and I think it's intentional. I think it's intentionally. It's just this brutalism, this brutalism, just like slowly but surely reducing the things around you that can speak to you. And just hem you in and box you in and just make your world smaller and smaller and smaller. There's a reason why people travel to Paris from around the world. It's to see Notre Dame. It's to see the architecture, the Paris architecture. They're not traveling to some modern art monstrosity place. To
be fair, there's also other reasons a lot of people travel there nowadays. But
there you go.
But we're not supposed to notice that, of course. So keep going.
Of course. I mean, dude, it's go figure. Oh, it was an accident that Notre Dame burned down. Yes, an accident, of course. Totally.
By the way, all I'll say is this: if you ever go to the Eiffel Tower now,
churches are getting torched on the daily. I'm supposed to believe that Notre Dame burned because it was a fucking accident. Yes, okay.
If you ever go to the Eiffel Tower now, probably the worst part of it is that right next to it, there are loads of people illegally selling shit, little like souvenir versions of the Eiffel Tower on like open like pieces of cloth, ready for the police to come to quickly run, put it in like a bindle and run away. Like that's like all right in front of the whole thing. So like even the aesthetics sort of being degraded now, guys. It just has.
Well, that or you're getting mugged by gypsies, or you're getting something else. Like it's always something now in Paris. It's tragic. All right, so cheesecake enthusiast Thorin, does the lack of a Italian, Spanish, or Portuguese scene with those imitable accents disappoint you, or is the French accent more than enough? He's asking if you need a variety.
He means because obviously if I go, hey, what are you doing? A similar, like if you could do all that, there's obviously loads you could do with that in there. But like, put it this way, it would be easier to do the accents for, wouldn't it? You know. So in some ways, yeah.
It's like Queserato is like Cacerach. I'm just like, dude, that's not happening. I can't even make fun of that. All right, Chinulada, what's your favorite type of meditation? You know, I always think fondly of the tank. You know, the
isolation
the sensory
tank.
deprivation tank. That was a trip. That was a proper trip. I always remember that one as in like, okay, that was an interesting experience, and that is hard to replicate because obviously it's not like you have a fucking deprivation tank in your basement, you know, like maybe
probably be one in Stockholm though, I would imagine.
But yeah, no, that was definitely a trip. But like your favorite type, no. Favorite type
by the
right
way,
now.
I'll just give everyone a little pro tip. If you've ever done the isolation tank, flotation tank it's called, but if you enjoyed it, right, and either, like, because the first few times you do it, your brain has to sort of like ease into it, and then you get better and better, and you can sort of drift off and have visions and stuff. Spoiler, if you want to just skip, now, I would suggest you do this very carefully. Buyer beware. I'm not telling you to do this. It's just a tip. You have to be able to navigate into there. But if you did it while you were, let's say, very high, then you would go to another planet. Let me just put it that way. So if you ever wanted to take the level experience to a 15 out of 10, get nice and toasted, climbing that motherfucker, see you in 45 minutes, son. It's going to be like some altered state shit, put out with. So just get ready. Because remember, you're going to shut all the sensory data out and just your mind's eyes.
Yeah, but who was that guy who was so famous for that? Who developed all of that?
John
meditation?
Lilly.
It was John. Yeah, that was it. Lilly. Yeah.
I mean, he was actually injecting himself with ketamine and then getting there to dissociate.
Dude, I can't even fucking imagine.
And by the way, if you never read his books, he's like a very serious scientist guy, but he literally has books that are all about how like he contacted like alien intelligences that were like communicating into what the world was going to be like. Oh, he had some really interesting stuff, mate. Yeah.
No, without a doubt he did, but it's just more like I can't even fucking imagine like the level you have to be at to be comfortable with that space, because that's just total loss of control. Like it's just completely on a different plane. Scientists love ketamine. Okay, tasty. All right, let's go. Favorite
historical... probably Vipassana, but keep going.
Pardon me?
Probably Vipassana.
Would be your
basically, if people don't know, the gist is it's one where the whole aim is you just don't like have any attachment to what thoughts come. Because I think the problem people have with meditation is this. They think that I'm sitting there and I'm going, don't think anything, don't anything. Oh, I thought something, don't think that, don't think it again, don't think it. Well, you'll never get anywhere doing that. Like what you're doing is the opposite. Think of it like this. You're trying to sit there and be like a mountain where even if a cloud comes by and it comes to the top of the mountain or snow comes on or an animal, you're just a mountain, you're just still, you're just there. Whatever happens, happens, and you're just letting it happen and letting it go. And so what you do in Vipassana is you just don't attach to the thoughts. So they'll come and they trickle along and sometimes they go concrete up into a thought and then you just let it go. The key thing is you're not trying to, you're just letting it go. And once you just let it go like that, again, it's a bit like actually the flotation tank. It's almost like a passive thing you're doing. You're not actively trying to do something, but if you get good at it, it's like going to sleep. If you ever sit down and go, I'm going to go to sleep, now you'll never get to sleep. What you have to do is sort of just let yourself drift off, don't you? And the next thing you know, you don't even remember the moment you fell asleep. So stop trying, basically. You just ease into it and don't judge yourself either. That's the other thing. You're not attaching judgment. Well, in general, that's the biggest problem people have. They keep punishing themselves because they're not doing a good enough job. You're never going to be amazing at the first time, so just give it a go.
That was a really good tip that I got from Tulam, or I didn't meet him personally. It was a podcast that he did where he was talking about the meditation. And one tip that he said was that, it's like he had that same experience where he was so used to overperforming and everything that he was just like, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes and I'm going to kick ass and I'm going to do it great,
No, you want to start like
a
minute or something.
Yeah, he had to walk it way back where he started with like 30 seconds. Like, I'm just going to sit here for 30
that's
seconds.
going to be hard. Yeah.
And exactly. If you're not used to it, like even that is hard to just sit, and then it's like, okay, 30 seconds, then 45, and then a minute, and then a minute and a half, and then 2 minutes, but like build it up like anything. It's like lifting weights, like anything. Just get some easy reps in and then start building up from there. Don't get discouraged right off the bat, right? And I felt that helped a lot to like, okay, it doesn't need to be, 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. It could be 2 minutes. Just sit there for 2 minutes. Even if you're feeling stressed and feeling like it's difficult to focus. Well, yeah, that's a good point. All right, it's go. Favorite historic event made into a Sabaton song. Dude, shoot.
The obvious one would be the arrival of the winged hussars.
That's a fucking classic. That's a sick one.
That's one of the good
ones.
ones.
Last Stand is also just the Last Stand is sick. Gott mit uns, like I just love the idea of that one, the God with us, like that was how they were telling each other apart in the battle, where they're just charging in and all they're doing is just shouting that so they know, like, don't kill me because there's no way to tell us apart. So that, I mean, there's too many. I'm like, the Sabaton is just so epic. It's he's the modern bard. They're just modern bards and like metal bards. It's such a trip to think about. I mean, the whole Carolus Rex arc is still one where it's just, yeah, the Carolus Rex album I love. Yeah, I don't know. What do you have anything in particular? Oh, the Hussars.
I'm not a huge fan of that band, so that's the only one I had, the most famous one.
It's still the Carolus Rex album. I can listen from start to finish. Like it's a gym album for me, or I'll just throw it on in the gym. The Last Stand is also probably one that I really do appreciate. All right, BZ, where do you stand on the veto and the premise of playing what your opponent is weak on versus playing your strengths? Should there be a rough rule you would have to follow if you were the coach IGL? If opponent is out of the top 20, better to play on your strength. If it is a top 10 team, you should play to their weakness. I like over time, I've actually kind of come to land on just playing to your strengths. And if you're confident in your game and if you have confidence in your game, to just focus on that and smash through. Like even if their map, unless there's like a really obvious one where it's like you're obviously better on this map and they're shit on this map, well then obviously go for that one. But even in maps where it's close, like just if you're confident in your game, just play to your strengths and crush on your strengths and don't necessarily try to get it. Because I've seen that backfire so many times where teams try to get clever and they're weak, they're supposedly weak on this map. We'll pick into that, and then you're not 100% confident on your game and you think you're punishing them, and then it backfires on you completely. So I always kind of lean more towards just playing on your strengths and trusting your game and trusting your team. But what do you think, Duncan?
What I would say is, first of all, you can't do any like hard bracket like what if you're top 10 or top 5? Because here's the problem. Like this is one of the issues I even pointed out before this tournament that I actually saw would be a problem for Vitality. Is Vitality was like the third best team in the world or whatever and won Pro League, but there wasn't a single map that they were like blatantly the best in the world on. Well, that means you're gonna have a hard time in all the Vetoes because you don't have like the classic Astralis nuke back in the day, or for Na'Vi it was nuke as well. You don't have that one map that if you pick, you are always going to win and it doesn't matter, and the opponent always knows he has to deal with it. So I think it's not as much about ranking, it's more things like this. I don't care about win rate. What I care is that team really comfortable on that map? Like, for example, it doesn't matter what the win rate is. Carrigan is always, in all his teams, good on Mirage because he just has a feel for how to mid-round on T side of Mirage. So that means in that scenario, it's not even about if they're the best team in the world. If I have like two maps I could pick as my map, for example, and one is like, let's say like Overpass, which is a bit more dodgy for FaZe, but the other one's Mirage, then as long as they're not going to pick Mirage, maybe I just pick Overpass here because like I'm just going to be like better in terms of comfort on this map than they are. I don't want to play on a map that they're comfortable on. Now, I would say one rare time, I actually think it's the wrong way around. In my opinion, the only time you punish pick is if you're a massive underdog, Like, think about this. If your best map's Dust 2, but you're playing against a team that's amazing on Dust 2, what's the point in you picking your strength? Whereas if you can, like, a little bit play Ancient and that's not a good map for them, probably better off trying to make it chaotic and put them on Ancient and just go, fuck it. Like, you're not good on this map anyway. I wasn't going to win anyway, so I'll just give myself I'll roll the dice. I'll see if I can do it or not. So to me, I think in general, if you're the top team, you usually just go to your strength because you are better fundamentally. But also the type of map matters. Like, people know I've often said I wouldn't play Dust 2 even if I'm the best Dust 2 team, if the other team's like a top 5 Dust 2 team, because it's too variable a map. But that doesn't apply to other maps. Like, in my opinion, on maps like Overpass, Nuke, if you're the better team, you win most of the times. It doesn't matter if the other team's like if the other team's the 5th best on Nuke and I'm the best, I probably want to play Nuke, mate. I'm going to win this game. Like, I'm going to grind you out. It's a map where you can do that. So I think it also depends on the map. And as I say, it's not about win rate. It's about how comfortable are they on that map, because you can put people on maps that they have a great win rate on, but there's a reason they never pick it. They obviously, something about it doesn't vibe with them. And even though they're somehow winning the games, they're feeling a bit uncomfortable. So if you notice, I always made the map veto about the psychology of the IGL. Why is he picking that? It's not that he's picking it because he's better. Like, for example, I do think when FaZe lost to BNE, the reason, I'll give you a quick breakdown because a lot of people got this lost, I noticed. You know, FaZe left open Vertigo on purpose, their permaban, which they'd only ever done once before, when it was against Ents in the EPL final earlier this year, season 14 or whatever, right? Here's the reason why I think FaZe did that float, because a lot of people don't know this detail, Semmler. Bad News Eagles themselves had a really bad win rate on Vertigo. So what FaZe was doing, meanwhile, Bad News Eagles was actually looking quite scary on Ancient, a map that FaZe wasn't doing well on recently. So what Carrigan is saying there, and remember guys, it went to fucking overtime. FaZe almost won that game on a map that they're not supposed to. What Carrigan's doing there is this. My team's in bad shape right now. We've gone 0-2 and we're actually facing elimination. So do I want to let this underdog team pick a map, which I have to if I don't ban it, pick one of the maps that I'm a bit weak on, that they're going to have a really good chance to get one map win on? Or do I want to dare them to waste their map pick on a map that they're bad at? And I've got a way better team anyway. Now, look, it didn't work out. He lost the map. But I like that gamble. That's like a rare example where I think that gamble is actually quite smart. It's just, it's not obvious. Like, the reason you're doing it is to, like, because as I say, it's one thing if they themselves floated it and said, we're not going to pick it at all. And also, by the way, he gets an extra veto. It's the fact that you trick them into picking a worse map for them. So I think that I don't have a problem with that at all. So I think this is why it is more complicated, because it's about what you're trying to achieve, not just what map you're going to play.
Bang on the money. All right, well, get ready. It's right on to you again. Skazord, question for Thorin. If you could only ever have one flavor of Gamer Supps for the rest of your life, which would it be?
Easy, because the problem is there is one that is my favorite, which is the Guacamole Gamer Fart 9000, which is just a stupid name because it's like a different creator guy made it. It's actually, there's one that's strawberry and lime flavor, and those two flavors just go together very well. Like, they're sweet and a little bit sour, and it's just one of those ones that has like a nice like sort of texture to it. Like, it starts out with an interesting flavor, then the middle one's nice, and then the ending's pleasant as well. So I just find that the easiest to drink. I think it's pretty nice.
What was the name again?
Guacamole Gamer Fart 9000.
Okay.
It was by some guy called like the Russian Badger. I don't know, some streamer. I don't know, mate.
Get after it, fellas. All right. Snake Gold. What's one current flaw you would like to eliminate with no effort?
Immigration. No effort. Oh, sorry. Did he mean in the game? Does he mean in the game though? Is that the premise?
No. I'm assuming this is a personal flaw. Or
oh, right. About your character. Fair enough. Okay.
A character flaw? Yeah, that's the thing. What's one current flaw you would like to eliminate?
I thought mine was pretty good.
You could always say like
just for society or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like world hunger is this a thing? You know, but then does hunger serve a purpose? Does like the world hunger serve a purpose? Like, I don't know. I'm not God. Yeah, I don't know. How do you want to take this one?
Yeah, let's do it like you said, like character. Do you have like a character flaw you would eliminate?
Procrastination, 100% right off the bat, top of my head. Like, just that is still
you
like
figured out why? Do you know why you do it?
Like there's like a self-destruction kind of thing, like where it's like I need to have something hanging over my head. Like, even if things are all going like the best they could be, I still need to have like some sensation of like impending doom. So like, even if I'm like on top of everything, like I will still procrastinate on one thing, just that there's one thing that's like, oh no, that's not good. Like, it's the worst thing, and I fight it every day. It's like literally the major character flaw that I'm dealing with right now, trying to overcome.
I would say the obvious one for me is like paranoia. Because the problem is just in my life, I've just had a lot of people fuck me over and try and do scummy shit to me. And the problem with that is it means even when you're succeeding, you're sort of always looking like, because here's the problem. It's not that it's not like, look, you can handle being wrecked and being betrayed by people. But what will torture you is the feeling of like, oh, I could have noticed something before that could have stopped it though. And that thought will drive you crazy, unfortunately, because that will become like an intrusive thought. And what it will mean is you will look for every possible vector of someone who could be an enemy, who could be someone who could betray. And if you do that, unfortunately, it will actually like somewhat degrade like relationships that maybe wouldn't have gone that direction or wouldn't go that far. So I would just say that's probably a thing I would remove.
Yeah, paranoia.
I mean, by the way, spoiler, one problem I have as well is notice it's a fabulous quality to have as a journalist because you're always going to be looking for the anglers and what someone's doing and shit. So the problem is I'm also somewhat incentivized by my job to think that way. So that's another reason it's tough to get rid of. Like, think about this. You know, all those fans for years who thought I just didn't like Astralis for some reason. By the way, you idiots. I was probably the biggest Astralis stan of all time, you fools. But they thought I just didn't like the team and so I was making stuff up. No, all the stuff I said happened. You saw it play out. Like, they were doing all that stuff behind the scenes, but you wouldn't look for that if you just came out like, well, I'm sure everything's brilliant. Another day in esports, la, la, la. Like, you have to be the guy going, well, what angle could they be? Why would they announce device this way? Like, what are they trying to do with the 10-man roster? You have to sort of be a bit paranoid to think of that sort of stuff. It's just the problem is you can't apply it to every part of life. It's got a time and a place, hasn't it?
That's really the hard part to switch off as well, though, because I think especially in esports, you start getting paranoid about everything when it comes to like your freelance esports. Because again, remember, your friends are your competitors. Your friends are your coworkers. They're also your competitors for gigs. So you're like constantly on like hyper aware of like every signal because it's like, what does this mean? You're analyzing shit like, oh, this, that, or other. It gets really fucked up really fast if you can't get a grip on it and be able to unplug and like have a good group that you can trust and stuff like that. That's definitely one of those things, dude. I can relate. Sorry, Archives of Justinian. What was the worst major playoff bracket? Apart from this one, I suppose.
Let me think. I'll have a look. I mean, off the top of my head, the Krakow one was obviously pretty bad, which is even the event people are comparing it to, because that was the one where like Astralis and SK played in the first round. It's like, really? Like the two best teams basically in the playoffs play immediately. North and VP played. Meanwhile, like Big and fucking Immortals played in the same round. Like that was a pretty bad one, if everyone remembers. Let me have a look what else.
I mean, the one that I always remember is I mean, the one that I always remember ad infinitum is 2013 when Very Games and Nit play in the semifinals instead of the finals. That to me just spoiled the entire event. I'm like, the grand finals is happening right now in the semifinals, guys. These are the top two teams and they have to meet here because the brackets got fucked somehow. So that definitely threw me for a loop.
I mean, the other obvious one would be, I think, Face It Major London had a bad one because that was the one where you had Astralis, FaZe, and Liquid all on one side of the bracket, which just meant Astralis beat everyone. And then the other side of the bracket was where Na'Vi was playing like fucking Big, and then Big was playing Call, and you're like, what the how are these matches going in the same time? So that was one where I've always thought it's so unfair if you FaZe or fucking Liquid. It's like, maybe I was like the second best team in the tournament, but we'll never know now, will we? Because I was on the wrong side of the bracket against the team that never lost any fucking maps in the playoffs. Did they? It's just a 2-0 everyone.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. I mean, you want to say jokingly this one, but even this one actually has some storyline at least. I mean, I guess the one thing that really just saddens me about this bracket is that Furia hit Na'Vi. Like, I still think Na'Vi are going to win it, and I still think at least, you have Na'Vi and Cloud9 on opposite sides of the bracket. If they were on the same side of the bracket, i.e. they could meet in the semifinals, then I would just throw this one out of the window, I guess. I'd be mega tilted. But Furia versus Na'Vi is pretty sad, just because worst case scenario for Furia, and obviously you would hope for Furia in front of the Brazilian fans that they could go a bit deeper. All right. Jerky's Minion. What's up, dude? Question. Make a point on why Trope Delete should be the opening song of the major finals.
Oh, he means the movie Tropa de Elite, which is like a Brazilian movie about a guy who's in like the police force where like they're so dangerous in the favelas. It's like the ones that go in like a death squad to just shoot all the criminals. So I assume he means like the theme track. I assume he's trying to make it like that should be the theme music because obviously it's so dangerous in Brazil and they're all like going to relate to, I don't know, that fucking song or something. I assume the premise.
Of course. Well, there you go. Jerk with the edge. All right. Well, there we go. Duncan gets it. Yeah, Duncan gets your train of thought, dude. I don't like. I should have thought that. But then again, you know, you like all the metal stuff and all that, jerks. I was wondering if it was like a metal reference or something that I was just going over my head completely. But it went over my head regardless. So touche. Well played. All right. Well, that's a show. We don't have any more questions on the GROGcoin. So I think we can call it there, dude. I mean, again, thanks to everybody to the support. I mean, quite a few of you tuned in live tonight, so that's awesome. Really happy to see you guys, and we definitely kept a lot of you throughout the show. So big shout outs to everybody for the support, and big shout outs to everybody who's been supporting as well with the subscribers, the likes, the messages on everything. That's also super sick. Again, algo gods, or just the the reach, the audience. I mean, we need to have those kind of comments to keep pushing the show. So thanks very much for the support and taking the time to leave a comment or leaving a like. But that's going to be it for us this week. Enjoy the finals. Enjoy the brackets. I mean, maybe we didn't get the perfect bracket that we were wishing for, but we still got a pretty decent one. So this is going to be a sick playoff run. The semifinals are going to be bangers. We talked about it earlier. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much, Thorin. Once again, my dude, great show. And we'll see you all next week for the next one.
Chris is not still in the picture. Still very much in the round.